Chapter 4563. Zombie. The virtual universe is like a big man in the sun. Since the battle between the virtual and the of the earth fell into a deep sleep, the zombie has risen, taking over the virtual god, and has become the new hegemon of the virtual universe. If compared with the virtual god, the strength of this zombie is naturally inferior, but this does not mean that he is weak. The strength of the zombie is equivalent to that of Feng Tian's ancestors, and he has taken that step, which is between the realm of the virtual and the six-marked virtual respect. The reason why he did not reach the real state of the virtual is just a lack of luck. Nothing more. Behind the Shishin and zombies, there are two left and right ambassadors. These two are standing in the realm of six-marked virtual respect, the most peak existence. After that they came out together, with different looks and breaths, but a powerful and unusual six-mark vanity. The third ancestor of Tianyao, the Lord of Refining Gods, and the Lord of the Enin Palace. These are the second batch of six-marked virtual respects originally reserved in the virtual universe. At this moment, they were also summoned by the virtual gods and moved in. They stood together, and the breath of them together went straight to Xiaohan, giving people an extremely powerful visual impact. Behind them, there is an attacking army composed of ordinary vanity, and they are also the largest. They fill the entire sky, cover the sky, and are vast and daunting. The most terrifying thing was that in the void not far from them, there were still vague waves, showing 7 figures wearing black robes. That's Bite the organization. At this moment they are integrated together. It can be said that this force is enough to destroy the sky and the sky, rushing to the sky and falling down to the sky, and swaying the 9 Yuhuang spring. Horrible to describe. At the same time, base camp in extraterrestrial battlefields. Woo! A sharp alarm sounded suddenly at high altitude. The people who were retreating in their respective palaces opened their eyes at almost the same time. Next moment, the deep voice of the gods of the earth sounded in their minds. The decisive battle begins and gather quickly. Boom! Suddenly countless powerful figures rose into the sky. The 7th team belongs to Jian Wushuang's palace. Did it finally start? In the eyes of Jian Wushuang, the mango surged 3 inches, and the whole person was full of sharp breath. Immediately, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and lifted the Taro Excalibur, which was placed aside, inserted into the waist scabbard, and stood up. Let's get started. Ha! When Jian Wu stepped on his feet, he disappeared into the palace. When Jian Wushuang approached the base camp hall, the entire hall was crowded. Seeing Jian Wushuang coming, these ordinary supreme, awe in their eyes, and took the initiative to separate a path for Jian Wushuang to walk. Unconsciously, Jian Wushuang has already conquered the crowd. He is no longer just the first person under the invincible supreme, but also the leader of the divine power universe. The word leader is so heavy. Sword Wushuang approached step by step, nodding slightly in response to these supremes. Going to the front, some invincible supremes looked back at Jian Wushuang, and their eyes also showed appreciation. Little guy, it's been a long time. The patriarch ancestor smiled slightly at Jian Wushuang. Senior ape, Jian Wushuang also smiled slightly at the patriarch. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's shoulder was patted again, and a loud voice sounded. Ha 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 ha, little chicken, old man sees you again. Jian Wushuang twitched his mouth, turned back, and saw his ancestor Feng Tian smiling at him. Senior Feng Tian. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and arched towards Feng Tian's ancestor. Hey little guy, I saw you. I forgot to ask you last time. What's your name? Feng Tian's ancestor said with a smile. Feng Tian seniors, junior swords are unparalleled. Jian Wushuang said honestly. Jian Wushuang? Well, the old man with this name is a bit familiar. When traveling around the universe in recent days, I seem to have heard people say that it was the first day of our universe, right? Feng Tian's ancestor looked up and down Jian Wushuang and said with interest. The junior is afraid to be. Jian Wushuang shook his head. Just when Feng Tian's ancestor still wanted to say something, deep inside the hall, a man with white hair appeared step by step. When seeing the of the sky, Feng Tian's ancestor's face suddenly pulled down, and he gave a cold hum from his nose. Don't go over and stop talking. The others, too, whispered, staring at the god of eternity without squinting, and their expressions became serious. Zhou God was expressionless, his eyes slowly swept from the faces of everyone, without saying any nonsense, but simply saying 4 words. Follow me. Yes. Everyone in the audience responded, and their voices went straight to Xiaohan, shaking for 9 days. Of course, in addition to Feng Tian ancestors, it's kind of the whole thing, it's just a whistleblower. He grinned slightly. The of the universe did not care about him, and he stepped on the ground, and the whole person suddenly turned into a streamer, sweeping away in the direction of the outer battlefield. Huh! There was a muffled sound and everyone followed. Just less than 10,000 miles away from the base camp, the 2 sides of the magical universe and the virtual universe met in the starry sky. The of the halt stopped, and everyone stopped. The men and women on both sides stood facing each other. Although there was no speech, there was already a terrifying warfare, and they were uploaded from the men and women on both sides. Swords flew, and they started. God of God, this time you can't stop it. Su Shen stood with his hands up, and spoke lightly. The dark fog surrounding him, like a rushing wave, swelled away, surging and surging. Is it? Zeus is expressionless. Stubbornness. The false shook his head when he saw the situation, and continued to say, Earth God, our dispute is nothing more than a fight for this cosmic luck. If you wish to self-cultivate, no, hang yourself under this starry sky. Promise not to move the plants and trees in your universe. Murderous heart. In this sentence, I immediately wanted to push the of the universe to the opposite side of the divine universe. Fortunately, Zishan's face was unmoved at all. The supreme man behind Zhoshan also had no expression on his face. Those who can become supreme are those with a firm mind. How can they be confused by these 3 words? The of the universe is here, and the universe of gods has the opportunity to turn the Jedi. Once the of heaven falls, the entire universe of gods will be reduced to fish on the chopping board, and let the virtual gods slaughter them. Seeing this, Shishan didn't care, just sighed and waved forward. Then let the killing stop it. Boom! Suddenly, led by dozens of 6-marked virtual lords, he led a common black lord with black pressure, rushing from behind the virtual god, passing by the virtual god, sneered at the man and horse on the side of the divine universe, hit it. Fighting broke out. List of chapters with high-speed text. Chapter 4564. The dark cloud crushes the city, and Jiaguang opens to the golden scales. The entire sky was filled with ordinary vanities, led by these dozens of 6-marked vanities, just like the locusts passing through the air, and the void was directly cracked. Kill! Wu Jiangxian's beautiful eyes were cold, and her voice was cold. The words fell, and Wu Jianxian took the lead in rushing out. She is like the ant who shoots a fairy, with a sword in her hand, enough to cut off all enemies in the world. Little girls, dance swords and get guns, come here for me. The first ancestor of Tianyao, the heavenly sacred place of the virtual universe, smiled vaguely, then pulled the right hand directly to open up a secret realm, dragged Wu Jianxian into it, and started a duel. I haven't had fun last time, come back this time. The patriarch's ancestor, White Ape, flashed in his eyes and shook his mind for 9 days. The boiling blood was like a big sun, which made people dare not look straight. He blasted out with a punch, as if he was pushing a golden carriage, struck Gu Tianting's war drum, and blasted towards the right. The waters of the river are in the sky. And the wine lunatic holding the wine gourd and wearing a tattered robe, shook his head and sighed. Suddenly, the endless innate sunflower water poured out from the gourd, as if the Tianhe River was upside down. The Milky Way rolled backwards, and rushed towards the left emptiness. In a short while everyone found their own opponent. Slightly behind the ghost of the half position, 9 heads spit out snakes at the same time, looking at the audience. The next moment, his 9 pairs of eyes fell on Jian Wushuang at the same time. You have the taste of this younger generation. The zombie voice was hoarse and cold. Presumably the little guy who delusions will die in your hands, right? The voice dropped, and the snake head on his far right opened his mouth slightly, condensing countless virtual forces. A terrifying breath spread from the mouth of this snakehead, just when the zombie was going to solve the sword unparalleled. Suddenly, the snake head in the center of his head was patted from behind. "Hey, your opponent is me." Immediately, a grinning voice sounded behind him. When did it appear? The zombie eyes narrowed, and he turned around and saw his old ancestor looking at him with a smile. "Is that a step out of existence? When did the divine universe exist?" The zombie spirit was slightly surprised, but in the information he received, there was no news of the ancestor of Feng Tian. However, only momentarily he turned back and spit out 2 words. "Interesting. Is it?" Feng Tian's ancestor grinned, raised his palm again, and patted it towards the head of the zombie. "In this palm, it seems that there are countless great worlds disillusioned, and chaos appears, and the power is extreme. There is even more interesting." Huh. Just as the palm of the chaos was about to be photographed on the head of the zombie god, the huge snake tail of the zombie had blasted out of the void, like a giant axe, and it came diagonally towards the ancestor of Feng Tian. Far away, Jian Wushuang took a sigh of relief. Although he is now the first person under the Invincible Supreme, he still has a huge gap in the face of the snake, who has stepped out of the Invincible Supreme from the realm of the cosmic god. Fortunately, the zombie has now been entangled by the ancestors of Feng Tian, and each of the Invincible Supremacy has its own opponent. On this extraterrestrial battlefield, no one can rule him. Kill. Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent, his eyebrows were cold, and his sword suddenly turned into a dazzling sword, and he rushed towards the mighty army of virtual respect. Behind the sword Wushuang, there are a number of top elites such as King of 9 Calamities, Overlord, Supreme Ram, and King Jinwu. They suddenly formed a sharp knife and fiercely inserted into the army of virtual respect. Suddenly the flames raged, killing and killing. God Corpse come, and on the side of the virtual universe, the ordinary virtual respect is headed by others. Not simply others, but the Moose Wind Elders who refined Shinzong. This time, the emptiness of the universe not only made up for the flaws of the 6-marked veneration, but also the number of ordinary venerations skyrocketed. Just refining Shinzong, there are 3 5-marked virtual honors of Moose Wind, Dustbone, and Lan Yuan rushed to this battlefield. I saw Elder Moose's right hand waving, and in the void behind him, he suddenly walked out of a tall corpse wearing armor, holding a long knife, like the of war in heaven. Elder Moose Feng roared, and immediately struck the tall corpse around and besieged. Cut! Jian Wushuang one sword split a 3-headed, 6-armed virtuoso into 2 halves, then looked slightly towards the Elder Wind Moose. This could not help but let Jian Wushuang sigh gently. In general, during the period of refining Shenzong, the Elders of the Moose Wind left him a good impression. If there was no shelter of the Elders of the Moose Wind, I am afraid that the sword is unparalleled. Kill. Sword Wushuang, who was about to collide with Elder Moose immediately, turned the sword peak slightly, passed by next to Elder Moose, and cut to another vanity. Okay. This made Elder Wind's elder can't help but hesitated for a moment. Jian Wushuang's power was strong. He saw in his eyes, and there was some speculation in his heart. Jian Wushuang is certainly one of the most powerful of the magical universe opposite him. In the face of Jian Wushuang, he was not sure. Therefore, when he saw the sword coming and going, he was ready to fight hard. Unexpectedly, Jian Wushuang passed him by. What's the situation? Elder Moose Wind was a little puzzled, but there was no doubt about him, and he slashed towards the others. Your opponent is me. Just then a low, indifferent voice sounded in his ear. He looked slightly, and saw an indifferent young man with red hair like blood, covered with black godliness and blood moon in his eyes. This person is impressively the king of the 9 calamities after being enchanted. After entering the devil, the king of 9 calamities not only soared a lot compared with the previous strength, but also became more indifferent in temperament. I missed the kingdom of God. King Jiucai spoke coldly. On the other side, Jian Wushuang looked at the scene and shook his head slightly. He can make himself not to fight the elders of the Moose Wind. It is already commendable. Naturally it is impossible to ask others, not hostile to the elders of the Moose Wind, let him kill. Elder Wind Moose critical. Jian Wushuang said to himself. After the Jijiawang entered the magic, He broke through the peak of the Supreme. And speaking of strength, he was not too weak. It's just a matter of life and death. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang no longer thought deeply, and directly turned into breaking dawn golden light, killing 7 in and 7 out in the army of virtual respect. The war has broken out. In the audience, except for the virtual and the cosmic god, everyone is at war with each other. Certainly, let the gods come and let this battle resolve everything. The of the universe fluttered with white hair, and his eyes flashed. However, Shushan chuckled and played with a tone of tone. Zhou God, the human heart is really a complicated thing, are you right? Okay. The god of the gods' eyes blinked a little, puzzled inside. However, he didn't think about it too much, and operated the divine power. So he planned to start a decisive battle with the virtual god. However, the next moment, the expression of the sky suddenly changed, and his eyes showed an unbelievable color. List of chapters with high-speed text. Chapter 45-65. How could this be? Qiuzhou breath took a breath. Just now, when he was about to run the divine power, he found out that his whole body was enough to cause the universe to explode, and the chaotic restart of the divine power became extremely slow. It was as if he had countless injustices and grieving spirits biting his body and his body, which reduced his strength by at least half. Su Shen. Wu Zhoushan took a deep breath and looked at Su Shen. His face became heavy for the first time. Although he doesn't know why his body has such a change, he can be sure that all of this must have been done by a virtual god. In this battle, I am afraid of danger. Zhou God, don't look at me like this. This seed is not bothered to use these means to deal with you. Su shrugged, smiling nonchalantly. All this, you blame yourself for your own fault. Even your closest people can't stand your approach and see the general trend. The god of phonology heard the words calm, but his heart sank. Immediately, he seemed to think of something, turned back, and slowly said, It's you? Hiding in the void behind the gods of the universe, Lan Su and Lan Lan are standing side by side. Among them, the eyes of the earth fell on Lan Su's body. Master. Seeing the gaze of the god of God, Lan Su was afraid in his subconscious heart and stepped back. I don't. Wu Lanci didn't dare to face the stare of the god of the emperor, and said in a panic, Master, what's wrong? Lan Lan was a stunner, and asked a little confused. God did not answer Lan Lan, but took a deep breath, staring straight at Lan Su's dodging eyes. His voice was a little low. Xiao Su, you have a habit since you were a child. You have eyes when you lie, look around. So don't lie to master. Come, tell the teacher, have you been deceived by the false gods and betrayed the divine universe? You can speak up and be brave enough to be a teacher and not blame you. The words fell, and before Lan Su's reply, Su Shen seemed to have heard something funny. He laughed sarcastically. Ha ha ha, god of God, this seat did not deceive him. It is your disciple who ran to Su. The universe came to me, and let this seat give him a drop of my seed of origin. As soon as this remark came to an end, Lan Lan, the of God, did not understand what had happened. I saw Lan Lan startled. She stared at Lan Su with a stunned look. It seemed that she could not believe that Lan Su would do such a thing, and was shocked. Brother, have you betrayed our magical universe? Suddenly, the heart of the universe sank completely. Original seeds. The original seed needs to gather thousands of original seeds to fuse one original seed. The power is endless. Once who has planted the original seed, it means that life and death are under the control of others. I am so apprentice, so ruthless. Sister, I do this for the sake of everyone. Tong Lanci seemed to be overwhelmed under the eyes of Zhou God and Lan Lan. He bit his teeth suddenly and stepped forward. He forced himself to look up and stare directly at the sky. Master, don't blame this on you. If you blame it, blame you for being too paranoid and too stubborn. To this day, why can't you see that our divine power universe is no longer an opponent of the void universe, and the void universe unifies the two universes? It is the trend. Instead of going to the corpse and traversing the wild, costing innocent lives, why not make a wise move and choose to surrender? Master, the disciple said something awkward. Did you organize everyone to resist the virtual universe? Not for your position as the of the universe? For your own luck. Because you know that once the divine universe chooses to surrender, then you alone it will be difficult to sustain alone. Not an opponent of Lord Xianshun. Master, your destiny is destiny. Isn't our destiny destiny? Why do you want everyone to be buried for your own selfish desire? Master, you are too selfish. A series of words like bangs spoke from Lan Su's mouth. As if these words, he has been suppressed for a long time, just to burst out at this moment. After saying these words, it seemed that he had drained all the strength of Lan Su. He supported his knees with both hands and gasped slightly, but there was some trembling between his eyebrows. Wu Zhoushan looked at Lan Su. Jian's original seed from the virtual had already taken effect in his body, as if there were countless bugs eating his body. However, this pain in the heart can't bear Lan Su's words. Wu Lance's words were like a knife, which was severely inserted into his heart, and he continued to split. Lan Lan was covering her mouth, looking at Lan Su in disbelief. Is this still my humble and gentle, respectful fellow? At this moment, in Lan Lan's eyes, Lan Su turned into a deformed and distorted devil who chose to eat. Lan Su, after taking a break, took a deep breath and looked back at the sky. His eyes became sincere. Master, Lord Shushan has promised me, as long as you are willing to sacrifice yourself and lose your luck, he is willing to end this battle, and the two universes will be at peace. Master, you can rest assured that your education is graceful and unforgettable. As long as you are willing to do so, the apprentice will surely support you in your old age and be at peace. After he finished speaking, Lan Su looked forward to the God of God with a look of anticipation. And Su Shen heard the words. On the face is more prosperous, his eyes slightly turned, looking at the cosmic God smiled and smiled. Your disciples are right, God of God, as long as you are willing to do so. How about this one stopping the battlefield immediately? Wu Zhoushan did not answer when he heard the words, but looked at Lan Su with great disappointment and shook his head. Lan Su, you are too naive. Do you think I'm dead the war will really stop? I tell you, by then, the billions of souls of the entire divine universe will be reduced to the pig slaves of the virtual universe Renren slaughter. It will even cut off the spiritual practice of the entire divine universe. Only then will the real calamity befall. And you really thought you could survive? You can't survive. This time, the god of the emperor directly called Lan Su's name, and no longer called him a teacher. What I mean is already clear. Tong Lan Su trembled when she heard the words, her mouth clenched tightly. No. Lord Shushan promised me he won't do it. However, this time the of the universe did not care about him anymore, but turned abruptly, staring blankly at the Su. A flash of determination flashed in his eyes. Su Shun, you can't win. Oh, really? Su Shun stepped in the void, and the corners of his mouth slowly aroused. It's time now, is it still stubborn? Wu Zhou God did not answer, but took a deep breath, saying word by word. Ancestral Art, Chaos Revealed. Chapter 4566 Boom. For a moment, the of Zhou dying with his hands, his white hair and long beard flying. His eyes were extremely sharp. A wave of hurricanes suddenly spread from the feet of the god of Zeus, raging against the bull. Soon afterwards, a rumbling muffled from the entire universe. The sky fell and the ground cracked. The starry sky moves, the sun and the moon change, and the entire sky is boiling. An ancient atmosphere of chaos spread out, covering the whole universe, as if to return everything to chaos. Wu Zhou's complexion quickly turned pale, and his body continued to tremble. However, in his eyes, it seemed that two flames started to burn. That's dead spirit. Countless two cosmic men and horses fighting in the blood, feeling this Xian, the horror of chaos from the chaos, are all face changes, horrified in their hearts, and looked at the of the universe. Qi Jian Wushuang is also in the ranks. When he saw the expressions of the gods of the earth, Shushan and Lan Su Lan, he immediately understood everything. Is Lan Su a ghost? Wu Jianshuang sank in his heart. This is something he never thought of. He had speculations about the candidate of the inner ghost. He had thought about whether it would be the dragon clan, wondered whether it would be two virtual god, and even guessed the 9 team captains in the extraterritorial battlefield. He didn't think that this inner ghost would be Lan Su. This caused Jian Wushuang's face to flash a moment of surprise and mistake. This is really unbelievable. Lan Su is a disciple of the universe. In terms of status, this universe is second only to the existence of the universe. What a jerk! Wu Jianshou exhaled a long breath, and at the same time understood that since Lan Su chose to expose his identity at this time, it must be that Lan Su's purpose had been achieved. A piece of void fragmentation formed a terrible void storm, like a tornado, raging in the void fiercely. The heavens and the earth exploded constantly. Everything was collapsing, and even time and space began to trace back, to obliterate everything and return to chaos. Reverse the time of yin and yang. What's wrong? How could this be? In a hurry, countless people looked up in shock. Even those invincible supremes who stood at the pinnacle of the era. Wuzhou's God is really too powerful to say that it opens up the world. It is not exaggerated, as if the creation came to the world, and it is necessary to reshape the heavens and the earth. With his own power, he suddenly moved the whole universe. At this moment, time starts to go backwards. In the eyes of Su Sun, the mansion skyrocketed, and his face changed as well. It's impossible. It's impossible. Even if I wait for existence, there may be a glimpse of opening up, but it's impossible for the entire universe to go back and forcefully reverse the rules of the universe order. Su Shen, you are right. The old man can't reverse the entire universe, but it is enough to open up the passage of time and space, forcing you and me into a stream of time and space. The mouth corner of Wu Zhoushan slowly opened, revealing a cold smile. Today it is a mortal situation. However, he can also use his decaying body to make the final contribution to the universe. You're crazy. Su Sun's face changed. He didn't wait for his shot, and the Zhou had already torn his hands, tearing the void suddenly. The torn void is like a mirror, reflecting a corner of chaos. Let's go with my husband. The sacred shouted, his eyes opened sharply, his eyes widened. Get up! The next moment, the corner of the chaos suddenly shot out of the yellow light, sucking the 2 gods of the gods and virtual gods. There was a flash of anger in the eyes of Su Su, and then he said coldly, Zhou God, 10,000 years. This operation will trap this seat for at most 10,000 years. After 10,000 years, this seat can return from the chaos of time and space. At that time, this seat will require the entire divine power universe, kill everything, and leave nothing in the grass. And you will die in this chaos. Hori Morris' cruel voice came from the mouth of Shushan. The god of Phenom did not reply, but when he was about to be sucked into the turbulent space-time, his eyes swept across the faces of the divine universe, and he sang loudly, Remember, as long as my divine universe continues to burn and endure, then my divine universe will one day have a new dawn. After a moment's pause, the god of God looked at Feng Tian's ancestor and said, Feng Tian, you have fought 100,000 chaos times with your old husband. And remember that you hate your old husband for 100,000 chaos times. The old husband now says sorry to you, you guy. The old ancestor of Feng Feng clenched his fists, took a deep breath, and exclaimed, Old man, you give the old man alive. The old man wants you to give me an apology in front of the whole universe. In the final analysis, he and the universe came from the origin, and were once the closest friends. If he really remembers hating the sky, how could he appear here at this moment? I am afraid that he has already trusted in the virtual universe, and he can't wait for the sky to die. At this moment, the vitality of the universe is getting weaker and weaker, and the dissatisfaction of the former is disappearing with it. Wu Zhou God smiled. He could feel that the original seed of the virtual had already struck fiercely in his body. I can't hold it long. Feng Tian, lead everyone to retreat, save the fire. They are our hope for the future. Finally, Zhou God glanced at Lan Lan, sighed softly, and glanced deeply at Jian Wushuang. Sword unparalleled, the old man will send you a great fortune, and you pick up. Boom! A white halo was slowly squeezed from the heart of Zhou Shen's eyebrow, and then a lasing burst into the body of Jian Wushuang in an instant. After he did all of this, The god of the cosmos no longer hesitated, followed by the of the false, and entered the chaotic chaos. He will use his own life force to suppress the 10,000 years of false gods in the chaos of the universe. Alas, the torn sky is restored to peace. Before he waited for Jian Wushuang to look carefully at the last moment of the god, what was given to him? He saw the 9 big snakes, and the sounds of the 9 heads were simultaneously een. The virtual universe, kill with this seat. Roar. Suddenly, the people in the virtual universe rioted again, and killed towards the magical universe. The old ancestor Feng Tian, who stood at the forefront, sank, and was preparing to resist. Suddenly, a thick black beam of arms shot out from the void fiercely, which actually penetrated Feng Tian's ancestor's shoulder directly. Chapter 4567. This slap was clearly far away from the zombie, but it seemed to be folded in the void, and was severely thrown on the 9 heads of the zombie. Suddenly, the 9 heads of the zombie shook for a while, and a red 5-finger fingerprint appeared. Bite 1, you look for death. For a moment, the zombie was furious. His face was extremely blue, and violent murder broke out all over his body, with 1,000 devil around the snake god. Suddenly it seemed to turn into a glacier of thousands, and the coldness of Sun Han was like the sea of anger. I can't help but humiliate him for a while. However, just as the zombie was about to attack, I saw one swooping with his right hand, and a huge prism with the word phasing in his hand appeared in his hand. Taking a look of calmness, she took a look at the zombie who was about to fall into madness, and said indifferently, Snake God, I am acting on the command of the Lord. Are you sure you want to stop me? Do you want to fight against our organization? As soon as this word came to an end, the zombie who had already planned to perform a killing move suddenly stagnated, changing his pupils to shrink, and his expression became cloudy and uncertain. Eat the Emperor. The name is definitely a nightmare in the virtual universe. For the zombie god, bite him without fear. Even tie up the whole bite tissue, his zombie does not look at him. But the Emperor, he really can't understand the details, and dare not act rashly. Even if the Real who stepped up to that point was silent, he did not mention the person who ate the Emperor. From this, it is speculated that the Emperor Bleeder is very likely to be completely out of that step. After I was silent for a moment, the zombie took a deep breath, and made a cold hum. Don't go over and stop talking. Apparently he has been subdued. When several people behind Yin Xiaoi saw this, their faces were full of shame. Suddenly, he stopped looking at the zombie god, but turned his eyes to Feng Tian's ancestor calmly. You're called Feng Tian, right? Lord the Emperor has orders. If you are willing to give up resistance, the Lord Emperor is willing to include you in the organization. He froze for a while, and then continued to speak. Feng Tian, you join the phagocytosis. We can make you take that step completely without being bound by the cosmic luck. As soon as this remark came to an end, not only did Feng Tian's ancestor's face change, even the snake turned his head violently, looking at Yan's masked face, and a shock came from his eyes. Having reached their realm, I naturally know how difficult it is to really take that step. Otherwise, it will not start from the birth of the universe. The 2 universes, the divine universe and the virtual universe, have only 2 people, the virtual and the snake god. And now, Yenny said that they can make them free from the constraints of the universe and take a step forward. This is incredible. Many divine beings on the side of the divine power universe. After hearing this sentence, their eyes were condensed on the face of Feng Tian's ancestors, and there was a touch of despair. Now that the of the universe is no longer there, the ancestors who are the highest in the audience are the ancestors of Feng Tian. If the ancestors of Feng Tian choose to take refuge, they will completely lose their resistance. I saw Feng Tian's ancestors heard the words, narrowed his eyes and looked at the one. The corners of his mouth slowly cracked, showing a smile, and spit out 5 words. Go. Eggs. After gnawing at the words, he was not angry or furious, but sighed softly. Pity. Immediately he said indifferently, Kill then, divine universe, one is not left. Yes. Suddenly, the 6 people behind the first bite all walked out laughing, twisted their necks, and their faces were full of cruel smiles. It's finally possible to do it, it's been too long, too long. Saying a flesh ball eating tissue, Ian said. Eat you guys. Another weird man with a full mouth is holding out his tongue and licking the corner of his mouth, showing greed in his eyes. Devouring again looked at the zombie with a negative hand, with a bit of command. You in the virtual universe, also do it. Bite one, are you ordering this seat? I tell you, you are still too tender. The viper laughed suddenly. I waited for him to finish, and then interrupted indifferently. After all this, I will sue the Lord Eater and let you join the eater. Ah, it is good. The serpent took a deep look and said, Bite one, remember what you said. After he finished speaking, the zombie glanced across the faces of the virtual universes of the virtual universe. His eyes flashed through the murderous words, and he spit out 3 words. Kill me. Boom. The words of the crickets dropped, and the zombie figure suddenly shuttled. 9 heads were opened at the same time, and they bit down fiercely towards Feng Tian's ancestor. Kill. Dreams of the divine universe die. Ha 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 ha, kill them all. Numerous virtual respects laughed loudly, immediately following the zombie god. When Feng's ancestor saw this, instead of flinching, instead his eyes rose to war, and Su Su laughed. If you want to conquer the divine universe, you don't see enough. Boom! The old ancestor of Feng Tian waved backwards. Behind him, a $1 billion gully-long mark was directly blasted, solemnly speaking towards Jian Wushuang and others. You retreat. Remember, as long as our divine power and the universe continue to burn and continue, there will be dawn in the future. The utterance of the words fell, and the ancestor of Feng Tian no longer hesitated, determined to burn the source of life, and rush towards the people who ate tissues and snake gods in countless virtual universes. This time, the ancestor of Feng Tian soared. My husband is sealed, come and die today. I stepped out 1 step. Feng Tian's ancestor broke through the breath soared again, and there was only a slight difference from the realm of the gods. Suddenly, whether it is a snake or a person who eats tissues, his pupils shrink and his eyes flash with fear. Rewind. This man is desperate. Retreat first, he can't hold on for long. Suddenly, the countless vagrants who were rushing towards Fengshen's ancestors, as if they had stepped on the sudden brakes, their faces changed greatly, and then they retreated. Fengtian Patriarch. On the magical side of the universe, countless people saw this scene, and immediately burst into tears. Do not. Countless people want to rush away, and help Feng Tian's ancestors. However, it seems that the gully tentacle that Feng Tian's ancestor had waved before had already expected this step, just like invisible glass, stopping them all from entering. When the ancestor of Feng Tian saw this, he turned his head back. His face was so cold and somber that he cried, Don't you understand my husband's words? Come on. Keep your life, you. Just hope. This word fell, and suddenly countless people broke their hearts and hearts, looking at the virtual universe, full of endless resentment. Back. At this moment the patriarch sighed. Don't let the sacrifice of Feng Tian's ancestors and Lord Gods go to sacrifice. Only alive will have a future. Someday we can make a comeback. Chapter 4568. The battlefield outside the region is a sad one. First, the Supreme Gap, who soared into the sky with his incarnation, made a brilliant blow and started the first battle. Later, there was the Cosmic God, who continued to burn the universe in order to protect the magical power, inherited continuously, and transformed chaos to suppress the virtual for 10,000 years. Until now, the ancestor of Fengtian burned his life and turned it into a wall, seeking a way of life for the divine universe in the midst of thousands of calamities. A predecessor of the predecessor, for the divine power of the universe, went forward and fell in the hands of the virtual universe. Difficult to hate Fan Xingxuang, poor new stop turbid glass. These seniors martyrs respect. Let's go. The patriarch sighed lightly and said, everyone from now on, let us save our lives and protect ourselves. When we shake the flag in the future, we will wait for the revival of the divine universe. Having said that, the patriarch's ancestor grabbed his right hand, grabbed the overwhelming overlord, and immediately stepped away, striding away. He didn't regret his life. He just knew that the dilemma of the divine universe has now been settled. Only by retaining a useful body can we contribute to the revival of the divine universe in the future. We are defeated. The martyr, the gourd fairy, poured a glass of wine from the gourd and sprinkled it on the infinite starry sky of the divine universe. This cup respect the cover, worship the gods of the universe, honor the ancestors of the heavens, and honor my divine power, the universe and the millions of spirits. Immediately, the martyr sighed and went away. After the martyrs left, many sages gathered in the extraterritorial battlefield side and began to disperse. Of course, there are people with a sense of death who choose to stay on the battlefield and fight desperately with the virtual universe. The divine power universe never lacks the fierce generation. The captain of the 7th team, Heiyuan Extreme, stayed behind and went to death. Want to leave? The zombie's vertical pupil twisted slightly, looking at the man who fled away from the divine power universe, and a sneer gradually aroused in the corners of his mouth. A group of loose sand also want to escape? After that, the zombie shook his head, 4 of the right of the 9 heads, and chose to separate. They directly broke the barriers laid down by Feng Tian's ancestors, led an endless vanity, and hunted toward the divine universe. Sword unparalleled, let's go. The king of 9 kings looked expressionless and said to Jian Wushuang, it is good. Jian Wushuang nodded, nodding. He is not a fool, he knows his importance. He knows his talents. And as long as he is given time to grow, he can grow and develop completely. Jian Wushuang is not afraid of death, but he does not want to die here. He still has to keep a useful body. Revenge for the supremacy of Gav. Revenge for the of the earth. Revenge for the ancestor of the heavens, and countless deaths in this battle spirit revenge. Well, the garbage of the magical universe, let's die. A monster with no arms on the left and 6 arms on the right, holding a large 6-handed sword, chopped down towards the sword unparalleled. Jian Wu flashed in the eyes of Jian Wu without even looking at him. The 6-armed monster only felt something white and blank, and passed by his eyes. Even if the eyes were black, the whole person lost consciousness. Numerous waters were mixed with stumps and broken arms, and they descended from the air, as if they had fallen into a rain. Let's go. Jian Wushuang looked at the king of 9 robbers. The Jiujia dynasty sword. Wushuang nodded. Today, the 2 should be regarded as the strongest fighting force in the Temple of Life, and they must immediately rush back to the Temple of Life and take them away. Just as the 2 were about to go away, Jian Wu stepped forward, looked at a dejected woman not far away, and said, Girl Lan Lan, will you leave with us? It is good. Lan Lan, she nodded her head. Today she still has a blank brain, and her thoughts stay at the time when the of the universe left. Jian Wushuang sighed, sighing without seeing anything. He waved his hand directly, and put Lan Lan in the town's monument. Immediately, Jian Wushuang and Jiu Jiawang Fei shot away. And the other side. Why is it like this? Obviously it should be peaceful ending. Why the master would die? Lan Su's face was pale, her mouth was tight, her body was weak for a while. His original intention of planting the original seeds for the of the universe was just to let the of the universe see the situation and choose to surrender. At that time, even if the of the gods had been dispelled, the magical universe would be free from disaster, and the war would retreat. Obviously, the of truth has promised him, as long as his teacher is willing to let luck, he will retreat. The worst result is nothing more than a divine universe, a subsidiary of the virtual universe. He never expected that the magical universe would fall to this point. Why, I just want to live, and I want everyone to live. Is it wrong? Lan Su clenched her fists, stubbornly but paranoidly said to herself. In his mind, he constantly played back the last look that the of the universe looked at him, strange and disappointed. You are too naive. The words of the universe kept reminding him in his heart. Go die. As Lan Su kept losing his mind, a loud laughter burst into the air above him. Lan Su hurriedly looked up to and saw a 5-marked vanity with a halberd, and split his face with a sloppy face. What? In the universe, the tragic sound of Lan Su came. And this 5-marked virtual honor with a long halberd. After Lan Su from the top of his head to the waist, split a halberd in half, and then sneered and chased and killed another person. Jian Wushuang, who had already blasted Yuan, looked back at this scene with no expression. Idiot! Spit out these 2 words coldly. Jian Wushuang and Jiu Zhiwang stepped on one foot, turning into small black spots at the same time. Flying towards the starry sky in the distance, the speed was extremely fast. Kill! A massacre has begun. Countless monks who have chosen to die in the universe have exploded, and do not seek victory, but only to be able to take away a few virtual universes before they die. Heiyuan Supreme cut 18 people in a row, and eventually died. A heroic man named Gaishi Haosher, who went forward and succeeded, fell in succession. This day is destined to be a sad day for the magical universe. On this day, the earth and earth trembled, seemingly inductive, sending out a mighty tragedy. A void in the extraterrestrial battlefield. Biting a negative hand to stand, watching Jian Wushuang leave. Hey, bite one, aren't we going to catch this little guy? Yen Shi said beside him. I heard a word, and a flash of meaningful light flashed in my eyes, like a smile. No hurry, he can't escape, let him escape first. I want to see. Now the level of the 2 universes is broken. One of the most important chess pieces is desperate, and Xuani can still hide. Yen Shi heard the words beside him, and suddenly nodded his head. Everything they do is for Xuani. Cosmic Calendar, 6982 Chaos Period. Divine Power Universe declared fall. Chapter 4569. Kill. Outside the battlefield, there is still a killing sound. Countless Supremes chose to fight desperately, and the last one fell into the extraterrestrial battlefield. This killing lasted for 3 days. 3 days later, the entire battlefield outside the region was dead, with countless stumps and limbs remaining, suspended in the void, as if silently describing the tragic battle. In the middle of the extraterrestrial battlefield, an old man who was already near the end of the oil lamp, and his clothes was broken, sitting cross-legged. Throughout his body, there are countless imaginary cosmic corpses, among which there are no less than 10 6-marked virtual lords, and even 3 of them have died here. On the periphery, there are more vanity, staring at the old man with a look of horror. Although he knows that the old man is at the end of his crossbow, he has reached the end of his life, but still hesitates to step forward. They have been frightened by their ancestors. They have never seen anyone who can fight the entire universe with their own power. For 3 days, the ancestor of the letter did not take a step back, and they could not move forward a foot. This is really appalling. In the last catastrophe, the old man hid 100,000 chaos times, and hid 100,000 chaos times. Feng Tian's ancestor sat cross-legged, looking around at the name of a virtual universe, and suddenly smiled. No one around him answered, just holding the sword, and looking at Feng Tian's ancestor with a jealous look. After speaking, he looked up at Wu Xingqi, and said with a pity, speaking of which, those old friends of the past have already left. Even the old man of the universe, this time also left. I fought with him for a lifetime, grabbed a lifetime, and he was ahead of me forever. Unexpectedly, he was one step faster for me this last time. With a bitter smile, Feng Tian's ancestor retracted his gaze and lowered his head, and there was no more movement. Feng Tian the ancestor died. It wasn't until a long time ago that the vain honors of those who raised their swords slowly entered. Dead. A 5 marked virtual respect, holding a long knife, daring boldly, shouted with a grimace. Immediately, the long knife was severely inserted into Feng Tian's ancestor's body, and emerged through the body without dripping any blood. Dead, dead. This devil is dead at last. Suddenly, there was a rush of ecstasy on the face of the 5 marked vanity, and he pulled back the long knife, intending to completely destroy the Feng Tian ancestor. Call out. Just then, a black robe with a red mask on his face stepped down and appeared in front of Feng Tian's ancestor. He flicked his fingers and directly took the 5 marked virtual respect with a knife, all flying away. This person is exactly one. Later, Bit mentions that Feng Tian's ancestors have exhausted their life, and the fallen corpse, Shen Xing said, thickly buried. Thick funeral? In the battle with Feng Tian's ancestors, 9 skulls have been blown up, and only 1 skull zombie remains. When he heard the words, he shouted sharply, Bite 1, this person almost destroyed my daoji. It hurts my source, but I still want to bury it thickly. You give me the body, and I will repeatedly crush and torture it in order to eliminate the hatred of my heart. When did this decision come to you? Yen took a cold look at him, then gently pushed forward with his right hand. Suddenly, the ancestor of Feng Tian's ancestor spontaneously suspended, rising all the way up, and finally disappeared into the cosmic starry sky. Born in the universe, die in the universe, rest in peace. Yen shook her head, then turned around suddenly, her eyes reappeared fiercely and killed. Kill. Slaughter all forces in the divine universe and reshuffle. Yes. The words fell, and the remaining 4 members of the phagocytosis group, as well as countless vanities, all kneeled on one knee. Just now, in the process of fighting with Feng Tian's ancestors, he has already used his strength to conquer everyone in the audience. Suddenly, countless vanities jumped up and flew towards the depths of the magical universe. Divine power universe in the starry sky. The 3 gods are flying fast. These 3 people are the 3 people who fled from the extraterrestrial battlefields, including Jian Wushuang, Jiu Jiawang and Lan Lan. Jian Wushuang, what shall we do next? After a period of recovery, Lan Lan's mood is better than before. Although she is still immersed in grief, it is not impossible to tell the situation. Now, as the only one who has made friends with him, Jian Wushuang naturally becomes him, and his main body exists. The King of 9 Kings also asked, Sword is unparalleled, and now the divine universe is broken. I am afraid that people in the virtual universe will not invade in a short time, and we are the equivalent of the divine universe. They never would allow us to exist, so we have to plan for the next step early. Jian Wushuang heard a deep breath, and took a deep breath, nodded his head to understand. No need to think about him. The next divine universe is bound to face a big cleansing. All forces will be hanged, all order collapses, and even if there is no hanged power, it will inevitably become a prisoner of the virtual universe. The magical universe will face reshuffle and start a new era. The only way is to hide in the 9 restricted areas. After thinking about it, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice, 9 restricted areas? The King of 9 frowned. Good. Sword Wushuang nodded his head and replied, the 9 great forbidden areas. The 3 dragons and the phoenix Kirin each occupy 1, and the ancestors of the patriarchs occupy the glacier forbidden land, and the abyss land occupied by the descendants of the dark devil. The big restricted areas are more mysterious than even the invincible supreme. They can't be guaranteed to come out alive. There has been no news of these 4 restricted areas in these years. If we want to avoid this scourge, we can only hide in these 4 restricted areas. King Juyen heard no reply, but groaned for a long time before he said, the sword is unparalleled. The danger of these 4 restricted areas is no less than the threat of the virtual universe. If we enter these 4 restricted areas, we are afraid of death. Jian Wushuang heard the words and shook his head, and replied, this is not the time to weigh the pros and cons. If there are only 3 of us, The universe is big, and there will always be a hiding place. But do not forget that the palace of life is still tens of thousands of disciples are waiting for us. After Jiu Jiawang heard a word, he stopped speaking. Chapter 4570. Among the cosmic stars, the three men, Jian Wushuang, Jiu Jiawang and Lan Lan, were flying away in the direction of the Temple of Life. Along the way, many top forces have been aware of the fall of the Divine Force universe, and have packed up their belongings and swept towards the remote parts of the universe. Only those Zongman forces and some mortals living at the lowest level of the universe pitifully still do not know everything, knowing that the world has changed. The whole universe is in a big mess. Among them, a lot of robberies were born. Many were the masters of power, or the ancestors of a certain family. In the past, there were big-headed figures. At this moment, they turned into interstellar robbers, ransacked wildly, searched for all supplies, and prepared for their own spiritual practice. Therefore, along the way there were sorrows and wars. When a person is free from order, he is no different from a beast. Ha! Sword unparalleled, slapped a middle-class supreme, who couldn't tell the situation, and wanted to rob 3 people, and then turned into a fan, then said, "We need to speed up. I'm afraid that many forces have the same intention as us, and want to hide in the forbidden area." Jiujia Wang Wenyin nodded in agreement. Immediately, the 3 men did not delay anymore, and all released their breath and flew towards the Temple of Life. Some supremes who originally wanted to rob while taking advantage of the fire, felt the breath of the 3, knowing that it was Jian Wushuang and the king of 9 robbers. They suppressed the throbbing in their hearts, and let the 3 leave. A few months later, the 3 reached the depths of the universe, the Temple of Life. Generally speaking, there is still a bustling scene in the depths of the universe. Obviously, the news that the divine power is broken has not yet been fully transmitted here. The 2 disciples responsible for guarding the gates of the Shrine of Life were quite laid back, chatting casually about the sky. When I saw King Jiujia and Jian Wushuang coming, they immediately played a clever trick, and stood up straight and respectfully. "Worthless Supreme, Supreme 9. Jian Wushuang nodded at him, without delaying the waste of time, but asked directly, "Where are they, the Supreme Master of Blood?" "The weaker Supreme Master, they are all in the Supreme Temple." "It is good." Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and then stepped on, and shot straight into the Supreme Temple. In the Supreme Temple, the 3 are the Supreme of Blood, the Great of the Great Axe, and the Supreme of Heaven. They are talking about the situation of the battle. The words are quite optimistic. Obviously, they have not yet heard the news that the divine universe has been broken. As soon as Jian Wushuang, King Jiuzai, and Lan Lan stepped on, facing the gate of the Heavenly Supreme, Great Axe Supreme, and Bloodwave Supreme, they noticed them. "Well, Sword King Wusho Jiujio, and disciple of Lord God of the Elder God? Why are you back?" Tina Supreme frowned and asked. At this time, shouldn't they be rivals in the extraterrestrial battlefield and the virtual universe? Could it have defeated the virtual universe? "Yeah, why do you 3 come back, Gavin Supreme?" The Supreme Axe also asked. The 3 swordless men did not answer, but faced the slightly expectant and happy eyes of the 2, bowed their heads slightly and sighed. He didn't know how to inform the 3 of the cruel news. Of the 3, only the blood was supreme, and he noticed that the faces of Jian Wushuang's 3 were not normal. He pressed his hand down, and signaled that the Great Axe and the Heavenly Supreme were quiet. Immediately, he took a deep breath, looked solemnly at the 3 men of the sword, and slowly asked, "Swords of Wushuang, is there something happening in the extraterritorial battlefield? You can say nothing. It is good." Jian Wushuang nodded his head. He is not an indecisive person, knowing that the news will come to the depths of the universe sooner or later. Now the most important thing is to hurry up and evacuate. "Extreme blood we lost." Swordless eyes flickered and uttered this word by word. As soon as this sentence came to an end, the same stone suddenly stirred up 1,000 layers of waves, and the blood 3 of the Supreme 3 were trembling with anger and shock. "What? Failure?" The faces of the Great Axe Supreme and the Heavenly Supreme turned wild, shocking. They thought that even if the divine universe could not defeat the virtual universe in a short time, it would never have been possible to defeat it so quickly. Of the three, only the Blood Wave Supreme smiled bitterly, without much surprise on his face. When he saw the three of them appearing together, he felt a kind of bad feeling in his heart. But he did not expect it, as expected. Well, what about Gav? Bloodwave Supreme breathed 3 times in a row, and then forcibly suppressed the emotions in his heart and asked. Jiful Extreme has fallen. Not only Jiful Supreme has fallen. Master Elder God has also died in the extraterrestrial battlefield. Jian Wushuang replied again. As soon as this sentence came to an end, it was as if in the minds of the 3 Bloodwave Supremes, dropping a bombshell again. The 3 Bloodwave Supremes heard that their legs were weak, and they almost fell to the ground. How is that possible? How can this be? The blood on the faces of the 3 Supreme Blood Women was pale. It seemed to be drained of blood, and couldn't believe it. They never thought that, as strong as the Lord God, there would be a day of fall. Isn't that representative? The people of the virtual universe are about to come in? Bloodwave Extreme raised his head tremblingly, looking at Jian Wushuang. Good. Jian Wushuang nodded his head and replied. The ancestor of Feng Tian used his life to hold the virtual universe, but I was afraid that he would not be able to hold it for too long, and the people of the virtual universe would not take long to erode the divine power universe. As soon as this word came to an end, the 3 of Bloodwave Supreme lost their minds again. Fortunately, the 3 of them are not emotional, but just after losing their souls, they regained their spirits. The past must not be chased. The magical universe has been broken, and the of the universe and the like have died. Next, they should consider what to do in the future. Extreme Blood. My opinion is that all of our shrines will be relocated, evacuating from the depths of the universe and looking elsewhere. Sword saw his eyes burning and said, Everyone move. Look elsewhere. After hearing the brow of Tianyin Supreme, he suddenly shook his head and said, No, I don't agree. This is the root of the Temple of Life, and the place where I was born. I want you to go. I was born in the God of Life. Chapter 4571. There was a dead silence in the Supreme Temple. Jian Wushuang glanced at the Heavenly Supreme, and then looked at the Supreme and the Great Axe again, and found that both of them were silent. Do you think so? Jian Wushuang asked. Supreme Axe didn't speak, and Bloodwave Supreme said with a bitter smile. Sword Unparalleled, you may not know our situation well. The 3 of us, when we were weak and humble, emerged from this life temple for us. It is not only the ancestral gate, but also the home. How do you want us to do it, and abandon this home? Even mortals know how to protect the home, defend the country, fight for the home, and die for the home. How can I leave my hometown and leave my hometown? As soon as this remark came to an end, Supreme Axe and Heavenly Supreme both nodded bitterly. Folly. However, this time, the Sword Wushuang, who has always respected the Supreme Master and others, has unexpectedly snapped and interrupted the words of the 3. Every land is lost, and everyone is lost. Extreme Blood, you are seniors. It is reasonable to say that younger people are inconvenient to argue with you. But recently, sorry, you have to listen to me. You say that the Life Shrine is home, because everyone in the Life Shrine exists. And it is because the disciples in the Life Shrine exist that gives it special meaning. Otherwise, it is just a piece of land. My Sword Wushuang doesn't understand what is right and what is the truth. I only know that he can treat his body with his own way. The virtual universe destroys my divine power. The universe has countless heroes. I must save my life and work hard. Grow. So that one day we can make the blood of the universe empty and pay for it. In order to comfort the many heroic spirits who fell on the battlefield outside the world. Jian Wushuang's expression was cold and cold. The 3 Supreme Blood Waves heard each other, all looking at each other. They never thought that Jian Wushuang would talk to them in this tone. In their impression, Jian Wushuang has always been a modest and gentle person. Jian Wushuang, it seems you are really grown up. Bloodwave Supreme sighed, not angered, but rather relieved. This represents Jian Wushuang, who already has his own opinions and ambitions. The supreme god of heaven nodded and said, Jian Wushuang, I admit that you are right, but I have decided to coexist and die with the Temple of Life. You can bring other disciples to transfer. Taking a deep breath, Tianxuan Supreme continued. Jiang Wushuang, with his talents, he must be able to lead the Temple of Life. If he can come back to the great cause one day, he may take care of himself. After waiting for him to finish, Jian Wushuang said again, Tianxuan Supreme, do you think I'm talking to you? Wow. The next moment, a prismatic black iron token appeared in the hands of Jian Wushuang. Here is the token of the Palace Master. I have no swords, which is the second sovereign of the Palace of Life. Jian Wushuo held the token and spoke indifferently. Wow. Suddenly, no matter whether it is the Supreme of the Blood Wave, the Supreme of the Great Axe, or the Persevering Supreme of Perseverance, even if it is the Jiao Jiawang who is a little far away, when he sees this token, all of them are flashing in his eyes and kneeling directly on one knee ground. I Bloodwave / Tianxian / Huge Axe / King of the Nine Calamities, meet Lord Gongzhu. Although they do not know where the Palace Master token in the swordless hands came from, the Palace of Life has rules. Those who hold the token of Life Palace are the Masters of Life Palace. At the same time, there was a rush of ecstasy in their hearts. At the beginning, the Life Shrine Palace Master left the Palace Shrine token before leaving. With the disappearance of the Life Shrine Palace Master, this token never came back. And now, this token appears in the hands of Jian Wushuang. Wouldn't it mean that Jian Wushuang saw the Lord of the Palace of Life? Bloodwave nature, and axe obey orders. Jian Shuang stepped out, his eyes flashed, and he said in a deep voice, the chief of the palace, heir, and the other three were involved in raising disciples of the Life Shrine. Later, he and the other masters left the Shrine of Life and found another one. Rest and rest. Can you wait? As soon as this remark came to an end, the three of Bloodwave Supreme and Tianyuan Supreme looked at each other. I wait. I dare not. The three said, bowing their heads. Well, let's do it. With a big wave of his sword, a gentle force suddenly lifted the four people's knees from the ground. Offended just now, Jian Wushuang said a little sorry. This is the etiquette of meeting the Lord of the Palace. Why did you offend? Bloodwave Supreme shook his head, and then paused. Jian Wu. Master Gongzhu, can the former Gongzhu be fine now? Without waiting for Sword Wushuang's answer, Bloodwave Supreme answered to himself. That's it. I'll talk about this later. I'll get the authors first. After that, Supreme Bloodwave stepped away. Now that it has been decided to move the palace, it is not too late to prepare everything. Master Gongzhu, I will go too. Farewell. Supreme Axe, Heavenly Supreme, Nine Calamities and others left. In the blink of an eye the entire Supreme Temple. Only Jian Wushuang and Lan Lan, two people. Jian Wushuang thought about it and said, Girl Lan Lan, wait a moment here, I'll go back when I go. Okay, you go. Don't worry about me. Presumably your beloved wife has been waiting for you for a long time. Lan Lan put a smile on her face and said. Jian Wushuang nodded and said, Yes, she has been waiting for me for a long time. After that, Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate anymore, stepped hard, and stood up to the sixth mountain of Life Shrine. Call out. A stream of light, falling in the manner of the sixth mountain, turned into a sword unparalleled in a black robe. From a distance, Jian Wushuang saw a gentle woman sitting on the shore of the manor's great lake and sprinkling fishing lures, causing fish to scramble for food. Hearing the movement, the frosty frost turned slightly, and he couldn't help but look dumbfounded. Alas! The bait in his hand slipped like a thread, but it was as cold as frost, just staring at Jian Wushuang. Fu Jun! Fu Jun! The next moment, Lung Rushuang got up and ran towards Jian Wushuang, and then bumped into Jian Wushuang's arms. She stretched out her hands and hugged the sword unparalleled, as if to incorporate the sword unparalleled into her body. Shuanger, you have suffered during this time. Jian Wushuang sighed softly, and stroked his frosty hair with his right hand, soothing his frosty mood. The pretty girl in her arms was already tearful and choked, and lost her voice. Chapter 4572. Fu Jun, you are finally back. Cold as frost tightly held the sword Wushuang. The nails were stuck in the back of the sword Wushuang. Seems to be afraid of such a let go. The sword Wushuang went away. Well, Schwanger, let the husband check, and check how much you have improved in this period. Jian Wushuang smiled, patted the frosty back gently, and let it go. Is it about to break the supreme soon? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and immediately appreciated. It seems that Schwanger has worked very hard this time, and he will soon catch up with his husband. Cold as frost heard the words, forced a smile on his face, but a faint surge in his eyes. She could feel herself, and she had less and less help with Jian Shuang. Although she has exhausted all her efforts to improve her cultivation, she is still farther and farther away from the sword unparalleled. She was afraid to go on like this, and one day, the two would become two worlds. Fu Jun, are you going back this time? Asked as coldly as frost. We'll go. Jian Wushuang nodded. Noticing the cold and frosty look, he couldn't help but smile. But this time, we are leaving together. Really? All of a sudden, a look of joy came from the cold, frosty eyes, and he looked forward to Jian Wushuang with his face full of hope. Of course. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and immediately told Lung Rushuang what happened in the outer battlefield. Suddenly, as cold as frost, he became disoriented. They talked a few more. At this time, the king of the 9 dragons, who also lived in the 6th mountain, came flying and said, Sword. Palace Master, all the disciples have been summoned, gathered at the mountain gate, waiting for your instructions. It is good. Jian Wu's eyes flickered, bringing cold as frost, swept away towards the mountain gate. When they came to the gate of the mountain, tens of thousands of disciples of life shrines had gathered. After tens of thousands of years of rest and recuperation, the Temple of Life has recovered as much as possible, and has slightly increased its strength compared with before, showing a flourishing attitude. If you continue to grow with great concentration, it is very likely that you will become the first force of the divine power universe in the future. Wait, see Lord of the Warriors' Palace. Seeing Jian Wushuang stepping from the clouds, these disciples all kneeled on one knee and shouted in unison. The sound shook through the clouds. Just a moment ago, they already knew that Jian Wushuang was the master of the Palace of Life, and the news that the divine universe was defeated. Their faces were full and solemn at this moment. Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. Behind him stood the top 4 supremacy of Jiujia, Blood Wave, Giant Axe, and Heaven. You guys, I want to know that you have already learned about the defeat of the divine universe. Now we have only one way out, and that is to find another place and concentrate on development. Do you have any opinions? Everything is done in accordance with the main laws of the Warrior's Palace. Thousands of disciples in the Palace of Life responded. It is good. The sword nodded a little, and turned back and ordered the king of Jiuzai. Jiujua Supreme, please release all the spaceships in my life shrine inventory, and arrange the disciples to board. Yes. King Jiujia nodded, and turned to prepare. Tianshuan Supreme, Jian Wushuang continued to look to the God of Heaven. You are responsible for putting all the books, magic drugs, magic materials, weapons, and source rocks of the universe in the library. Observe. Noble Supreme nodded and turned into a streamer, looting towards the library. Extreme Axe. Sword Wu's eyes turned, and he looked at the Supreme Axe again, and sent orders one after another. Suddenly, the entire Shrine of Life began to move quickly. Immediately afterwards, Jian Wushuang stepped forward and came to Wudao River. Yiling. Jian Wushuang stood with his hands on his back, stood on Wudaoha, and drank softly. For a while, the dwarf man with a small mustache and a height of less than 3 feet came out of the Wudao River. Heavenly Sword, no. When he saw Jian Wushuang, he exclaimed, and before he finished speaking, he saw Jian Wushuang's eyes glared, his head stopped, and he smiled. Wushuang Supreme. Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. This river spirit should be the only person in the life shrine who still doesn't know his identity, and the news that the magical universe has been defeated. Gather up and leave me with the Temple of Life. Leave the Temple of Life? Yiling, who was still smirking and charming, suddenly widened his eyes and stared at Jian Wushuang. Then he cried like a cat with the tail on his tail. Well, you are a sword. Eat something out of it and publish personal revenge. Do you now feel that you are terrible, and you want to avenge Master Ben Helling? I tell you, even if I am a dead head here, even if the Palace of Life is dead, I will not leave. I will live and die with the Palace of Life. In these words, the meaning of righteousness sounded righteous. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and immediately laughed, throwing his sleeves and saying, "Then you are here to prepare for death." After that, Jian Wushuang was ready to leave. Wu Dao Heling glanced at Jian Wushuang at an oblique angle, snorted coldly, and looked dismissively. Just then, Yu read the book www. Akanshu, calm, a disciple of Life Shrine who packed his bags, passed from high altitude, saw Wu Dao Ling, couldn't help but stop, landed from the air, quite unexpectedly. Master Heling, are you not ready to leave yet? Leave? Why should I leave? Heling yanked her nose, popped a booger, shot it on the ground and said disdainfully. The Life Shrine disciple couldn't help but feel even more astonished when he heard the words and replied, Master Helling, don't you know that? The magical universe has fallen to the north, and the strong of the virtual universe will soon hit here. After speaking, the disciple stopped saying more. As soon as he stepped on his foot, he walked towards the Shanmen Square. Several of his brothers had boarded the ship, and he could not delay it. What? The divine universe is defeated? The people of the virtual universe are about to attack? Heling's movement of picking his nose was stalled, and the whole person was stunned. Immediately, he slammed in excitement all over his body, groaning mother. The next moment, the river spirit plunged into the river of awakening. After a few breaths, the little gnome-like adult, Heling, carrying a bag resembling a flower pants, rushed out. Hey, the little guy in front, wait for my master! He shouted out of breath. Go to the death and coexistence of Tang Yang. After an hour, all preparations are completed. Chapter 4573, Yenshan Supreme. Jian Wu's eyes looked towards the mountain at the gate of life Jingu, and his brows could not help being locked. Yenshan Supreme. His body has long been connected to the entire Palace of Life, just like a big tree deeply rooted in the ground. The land under his feet is Yenshan Supreme's chest, and the flowing river is Yen, extreme blood of the mountain. He has long been separated from the Shrine of Life. Palace, don't worry about me. On the huge mountain, the face of Yenshan Supreme emerged. He looked at Jian Wushuang and smiled slightly. In these years I can't move, but I've already built a magical power that can hide the breath. As long as I don't actively expose the breath, even if the invincible Supreme comes, I can never see my own body, but only when I am an ordinary mountain. You guys just leave. Jian Wushuang heard a silence for a moment, then nodded. No matter whether Yenshan Supreme said true or false, just to comfort him to say this, he must only take it as true. Today he is no longer full, and the family is not hungry. He must carry the entire Life Shrine, and be responsible for the thousands of lives in the Life Shrine. Let him be indecisive. After a while, all the disciples boarded the spacecraft, leaving only the 4 chief supreme leaders, including Jian Wushuang and Jiu Jiawang. Alas, at this moment, a dull sound came from the direction of the Tibetan Pavilion of Life Shrine, and the whole earth shuddered. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, turned his head, and saw that Tianzuan Supreme pushed from inside the Tibetan Pavilion, and pushed out a huge dragon-like cannon. This dragon cannon is as large as 100 feet. At the muzzle alone, it has the size of a pond, towering into the clouds, and the dark cannon body is full of bronzing gods. This is... Jian Wu's eyes narrowed, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. He felt a dreadful sense of danger on this faucet. In terms of his current strength, some ordinary invincible supremes cannot bring him such a sense of danger. Gongzhu, this is the big killer at the bottom of the pressure chamber of our Life Shrine. Destroy the dragon artillery. It is a skull made after the death of Zulong. Although it has only one blow, it can kill. Invincible Supreme. Tina Supreme said with a smile. Oh. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and replied. There are such big killers. Why didn't they take them out when the 6 major forces invaded the Palace of Life? The Bloodwave Supreme came out and explained. The Palace Master. Although this dragon artillery is enough to instantly kill the invincible Supreme in an instant, but it has only one blow. At that time, although the situation of the Life Temple was critical, it had not yet reached the gate of destruction to the extent that it is unavoidable to use this thing. With a bitter smile, Supreme Blood continued. Well, we can't use this dragon cannon at the time. The dragon cannon must use a special key to start. Key? Jian Wushuang gave a flick. Good. Bloodwave Supreme nodded his head, stretched his fingers toward the sword and sang on his waist, representing the identity of the Palace of Life Jinggong, as a jade-like black iron token, and replied. Master Palace. The key is the Palace of Life Jinggong tokens. The last time the old Palace Master did not return, the Palace Master's token disappeared, and this big killer has been put on hold in the Tibetan Pavilion. So it is. Subsequently, Jian Wushuang was informed by the Supreme Master of Blood, and used the token of the Palace Master to unlock the dragon cannon, and earn it into the Ring of War. At this point, the relocation plan of the Shrine of Life has been completely arranged. Rumble. With the roar of a sound engine, dozens of cosmic boats were suspended in the starry sky, and a roar and roar were issued, and a catapult suddenly flew towards the extreme north direction of the universe. The wind on the deck of the first spacecraft was fierce. Jian Wushuang stood in silent hands, looking back towards the direction of the Temple of Life. With the rapid speed of the spacecraft, the Temple of Life has become smaller and smaller, until a small black spot. I will definitely be back, definitely. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang no longer hesitated, suddenly turned away, no longer looking at the Temple of Life, but his eyes flashed, looking far ahead. 3 months passed. Within these 3 months, a large group of people and horses in the virtual universe finally killed all of them. They walked all the way. They killed all the way. The whole magical universe, a raging flame of war, sorrowful and wild. In the past, the starry sky, which was originally brilliant, was all stained with blood. Begging for mercy, sorrow, roar, and endless roaring madness become all the melody of this universe. In just 3 months, the large and small gates that have fallen have exceeded hundreds. There are thousands of universes, and the entire race is slaughtered by the virtual universe. There are top forces, enslaved by the virtual universe, turned into puppets without self-consciousness, and left to manipulate. At the same time, countless fierce battles broke out in the universe. There is a kingdom of God, the ants and mortals who descend to the kingdom of God, up to the of the kingdom of God, and the supreme state of God are all dying, and they will fight to the last moment of life. Even if they are the last to fall for a moment, billions of souls across the country were silent, without asking for mercy. They only have one sentence. Health, standing health. To die, to die. There are also top forces, the Lord of the Holy Land of one party, who has kept only a trace of tinder, and sent the most talented disciples in his sect. He personally led more than 8,000 disciples in the sect. Divine Power Universe, never an ischemic person. In the magical universe, this icy and lonely starry sky, they wrote a series of epics. The space fleet of the Shrine of Life is already getting closer and closer to the far north of the universe, and the direction of the 9 restricted areas. In the cabin of the first spacecraft responsible for opening the road, Swordsman, Giant Axe Supreme, Bloodwave Supreme and others are gathered together to discuss the resettlement. The 4 of them gathered around a round table, which was developing a map with divine power. Nothing else on the map, only 9 restricted areas. Among the 9 restricted areas, there are already 5 restricted areas, which were crossed by Jian Wushuang and 4 others. The Palace Lord, the Dragon, the Phoenix, and the Unicorns each occupy a large forbidden area, and the Dark Demons and the Hegemon ancestors also occupy a large forbidden area. In such an emergency, I am afraid that they will not let us in. Chapter 4574. Gumming Cave. Tombs of the Gods. A Land of Sadness. Emperor Zhu Ruins. These 4 places are the 4 restricted areas that no one has yet set foot in. Jian Wushuang frowned, looking at the map of the evolution of divine power, and turned into restricted areas, without speaking, but quickly thought about it. He already has a preliminary understanding of these 4 places. The first is Gumming Cave. It is said that the formation of the Gumming Cave was at the beginning of the universe. The Hongmenki was divided into 2. However, this turbid gas was not exhausted. The rest of the turbid gas gathered together and entered the northern region together, forming this ancient Ming Cave. It is rumored that in this ancient Ming Cave, there is a large amount of turbid air reverberating day and night, emitting a huge roar, which is enough to scrape bones and flesh, and destroy the soul. Even if it is the invincible Supreme himself, he can't hold on to the incense time in it. Because of this situation, Gu Ming Dong, without one living, has always been the most empty forbidden area of the divine universe. Secondly, it is the tomb of the gods. Many tombs are buried in the tombs of the gods, and most of these undead came from the beginning of the universe, the dragon and phoenix unicorn calamity, and the follow-up war with the virtual universe, and the mighty undead who died in the War of Calamity. Therefore, the tombs of the gods are filled with these terrifying warfare before the power, and various emotions such as unwillingness, anger and sadness. With these emotions, even if it is invincible and supreme, if you spend a long time in it, your mind will be affected, and you will become a complete lunatic. After thinking about it, Jian Wushuang erased these 2 forbidden areas. There is no invincible supreme seat in the Shrine of Life today. It is too dangerous to go to these 2 forbidden areas. It can be said that as long as Jian Wushuang dared to bring the life shrine into these 2 forbidden places, almost as long as 10 minutes were not enough, the entire life shrine disciples would be wiped out. The ending of his sword unparalleled is just to hold on for a few more breaths. Seeing Jian Wushuang's actions of erasing the 2 forbidden areas, Supreme Blood Wave, Great Axe, etc., nodded secretly. Jian Wushuang's idea almost coincided with them. The Palace Master. Then the forbidden land that we can choose is the land of sadness and ancestors. The Blood Wave Supreme Shen began. Okay, I know. Sword Wushuang nodded his head, and turned to look at the last 2 forbidden places on the sand table map. The Sad Land and the Emperor's Ancestral Site are 2 of the most mysterious forbidden places recognized by Divine Universe. At that time, 2 invincible supremes chased each other and fled into the Emperor's Ancestral Site, but the 2 never came out again. If we say that the tombs of the gods and the caves of Gumming, everyone knows 1 or 2 things. In the face of this tragedy and the Emperor's Ancestral Site, it is a black eye. The only information I knew was that the 2 forbidden grounds were rumored to have been formed long before the universe was chaotic. Chaos is not on. How old is that palace? Which forbidden area do we choose? Bloodwave Supreme asked. Jian Wushuang heard this for a moment, then shook his head and said, For us, the situation in these 2 forbidden places is similar. Once we have reached the extreme north of the universe, take another step and look at it. It can only be so. Bloodwave Supreme and others looked at each other, and couldn't help looking at each other, all smiling bitterly, thinking of their life shrine. When the magical universe is one of the top forces, when this disaster strikes, they have no resistance, and it is extremely difficult to find a hiding place. Just as everyone was talking, da-da-da, there was a sudden footstep on the deck. Immediately afterwards, I saw a disciple in the Palace of Life, hurriedly walked quickly into the cabin and said, Master Gong, Chief Supreme, there is a refugee rowed outside the boat, and he wants help. Huh, refugees? Jian Wushuang frowned. Bloodwave Supreme explained by the side. Palace, you do know, and then the universe is killed. Many disciples or elders originally from the big forces are displaced, wandering in the universe. They are refugees. Is that so? Jian Wushuang thought for a while, and did not rashly order him to accept this group of refugees, but said, Let's go and see what happens first. After that, Jian Wushuang got up and stood up, walking frostily, towards the cabin. The 4 chief supremacy of Blood Wave, Giant Axe, Nature and 9 kings are slightly behind the swords. Walking to the deck of the spacecraft, Jian Wushuang looked up, and saw a crowd of people standing in front of the spacecraft. These men were shabby and shaved, showing their embarrassment. The old man, headed by him, had white hair hanging down, covering most of his face, and was covered with blood. At a glance, you can see that these people were just afraid of experiencing a violent killing before they escaped. My lord, my husband is leaning on the horse. In the past he was the elder of Tianyuanzong, but please keep it. The old man, headed by the sword, saw Jian Wushuang stepping out of the way, and immediately knelt down, holding his head again and again. Behind it, the refugees who came from all corners of the world, gathered because of the fugitives, kneeled and whispered words. Father, they are so pitiful, so they are taken in. Seeing cold like frost, could not help but soften. Jian Wushuang heard no reply, but stared at the oblique horse that claimed to be the elder of Tianyuanzong, and looked at it for nearly 10 seconds, before turning his eyes to look at the hundreds of refugees behind him. Sorry, our cabin is full and we can't hold so many people. The sword is open without expression on both sides. After that, he turned to return to the cabin. The frost was cold, and she clearly remembered that there were still many places in the cabin. But she always trusted Jian Wushuang, and she didn't say more when she saw the situation. Instead, she took a closer look at the refugees. At this look she was shocked and saw something strange. The old man, headed by the refugees, saw Jian Wushuang turned and wanted to leave, and his eyes narrowed suddenly, and a touch of fineness appeared in his eyes. Immediately after he yelled, "Sir, save us! We don't have a cosmic boat. Those in the virtual universe will be killed immediately, and we will all die. I beg you to raise your hand and save us." After he shouted, the refugees behind the old man also cried. The sword has no footsteps. He turned his head again and looked at the refugees, his expressionless expression gradually indifferent. Press over. Chapter 4575. Press over. When the words of Jian Wushuang fell, the disciples of life in the palace behind him were startled. Palace, the palace master. Don't let them board the ship, just press them over, isn't it great? A life shrine disciple said stutteringly. Jian Wushuang heard nothing and ignored him, but stared at the old man headed by the refugee with a grim expression, with an indifferent expression. Haha. And the old man with a sad face laughed suddenly. Little baby, tell me, how do you tell? The old man slowly stood up. The sadness on his face was gone. Instead he stuck out his tongue and licked the corner of his mouth, showing a touch of greed in his eyes. Along with the old man's showdown, the refugees behind him also got up and stood up, with a tinge of light on their faces. Leader, don't talk nonsense with this little baby. Kill them all and steal their space battleship. A refugee stood behind the old man and smiled vaguely. Jian Wushuang took a scornful look at the old man and said lightly, "If I'm not mistaken, have you just ransacked others? The blood on your body is all other people, and it's hard not to be seen." Is that so? The old man narrowed his eyes, glanced down at the blood on his body, and seemed to remember something. He said, "There was a couple just now, they just needed to trust us, but they just didn't know it. So the old man had to kill her aunt and daughter in front of the man, and then crush the man's body inch by inch. In the end, the man couldn't bear it and died." At this point, the old man raised his head and looked around Jian Wushuang and Lung Rushwang's face next to him, revealing a trace of obscenity, and said hushingly, "Little doll, presumably you are a smart person. Wouldn't you be so uninteresting?" As soon as the words fell, he hadn't waited for the sword Wushuang to move. The cold frost beside him was already furious, and the long whip in his hand appeared out of nowhere, blasting the void directly, spreading for thousands of miles, and beheading towards the old man. "Ha ha ha, you little girl, it's hot." The old man laughed loudly, soaring into the sky, revealing repairs. A half-step invincible and supreme momentum spread suddenly. With just one flick of his finger, he flew off the frosty long whip. Half-step invincible supreme. Suddenly, the blood of Supreme and other people sank. You should know that with the fall of the Gava Supreme, the cultivation of the entire Palace of Life is the highest. But it is only the breakthrough of the Bloodstream Supreme. But the Bloodwave Supreme only stepped into the half-step Invincible Supreme. And this old man, looking at his strong breath, is like a prison in the deep, apparently already an old-fashioned half-step invincible supreme. Lord, let me do it. Bloodwave Supreme took a deep breath, his expression dignified. No need. Jian Wushuang shook his head, squinted at the old man, and spit out 2 words indifferently. Brute. Immediately, Jian Wushuang stepped into a sword light and killed the old man. Miles of clouds have been cut. Between heaven and earth, there is only one line left. Oh! Feeling this biting sword, the old man was shocked at first, then immediately dismissed. Medium and supreme, dare to arrogant in front of me? The palace master is careful. Blood Sovereign saw Jian Wushuang rush to the past, and his heart was equally shocked. Sword warriors have separated the divine power from the universe for thousands of years. The impression of Bloodwave Supreme on sword warriors staying is still the elementary state of supremacy, and its strength is at the highest level. Today Jian Wushuang, although breaking through the medium supreme, but want to come a half-step invincible supreme, still far behind. Even the coldness was frosty, and the heart was clenched fiercely. The sword is unparalleled, leaving the magical universe for too long. Many people have long forgotten his combat power. In the audience, only the king of Jiujia looked indifferent, and he was not worried about Jian Wushuang at all. He knows the sword unparalleled combat power. Today's sword unparalleled cannot match the invincible supremacy, because it has not been tried, but looking at the world, no one exists under the invincible supreme, can support 10 moves. Even the most powerful of the 5 marked virtual honor of the virtual universe, the fucking, was beheaded by the sword unparalleled 10 strokes. What is this old man? Ha ha ha, Junior, if you don't know anything, just blame the old man. The old man laughed wildly, and before he finished speaking, the laughter came to an abrupt end. A skull broke away from his neck and flew high. Immediately afterwards, his body was broken like a mirror that fell to the ground fiercely. How can you? The face of the old man's skull surged to the extreme, and looked at Jian Wushuang in horror. My lord, the younger ones don't know Tarzan. They don't know the real person. You have a lot of adults. Raise your expensive hands, and let the little ones. He frantically begs for mercy, hoeing like garlic. Noise. The sword Wushuang proudly stands in the void, flicks his fingers, and instantly a sword-on shoots out from his fingertips, piercing it. Boom! The next moment, the old man's head shattered like a cracked watermelon, and he could not die anymore. Seeing this scene, the desire to rush out of the blood wave is supreme. The action is stagnant, and a flash of dullness flashes in both eyes. And those refugees who followed this old man saw that they had died for a while. Soon. Oh! The refugees screamed and fled. Jian Wushuang patted his right hand gently to his waist, and suddenly the sword of Tai Luo came out of the sheath instantly. Like the same white dragon was shocked, he rushed up and killed them one by one. After a while, the Taro sword was automatically sheathed and fell into the Taro sword sheath. The sword has no twin body shape, and has returned to the deck of the space boat from the void space. Bloodwave Supreme then slammed a shock response, grabbed the arm of Jian Wushuang, and never had a disorientation, asking, Palace, do you have the same combat power as the Invincible Supreme? I don't know. I guess it can be a battle. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. This is not his arrogance but confidence. Today's sword unparalleled not only broke through the middle supreme, the cultivation is skyrocketing, and then sealed the land of the gods, but also received all the spiritual insights given by the main Tao of the Supreme Palace of Life Shrine. He refined this insight every day. His strength almost doubled with the day the water rose. The reason for his uncertainty is that he has not yet had a chance to truly fight the Invincible Supreme. Chapter 4576. After 3 months, the space fleet of the Temple of Life gradually broke away from the bustling and came to the far north of the universe. The temperature plummeted at the cliff-like speed, and a thick layer of frost was deposited on the entire deck of the spacecraft. In front of it is a cold and lonely starry sky. 9 galaxy-like galaxies hover quietly in front of it, exuding a icy cold. Of the 9 restricted areas, The 3 dragons, and unicorns already accounted for 3 of them, plus the tyrants of the tyrants, and the descendants of the dark demons occupied 2, leaving only 4 restricted areas. Gumming Cave and the tombs of the gods have long been eliminated by Jian Wushuang in their expectations. Therefore, there are only 2 choices: the Emperor's ancestral site and the Sad Land. Jian Wushuang looked at the 2 restricted areas, his eyes flashed, and he began to think carefully. These 2 forbidden grounds were formed before the universe was opened, and no one can know what is inside them. Therefore, the degree of danger does not make any difference to Jian Wushuang. Palace, I think it would be better for us to go to the Emperor's site. Bloodwave Supreme said aside. Why? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrow and asked. Bloodwave Supreme heard a smile, shook his head and replied, I don't know. There is a sense of intuition in it. It feels like this Emperor's ancestral site seems to have an opportunity to make a difference. Well, then go to the Emperor's site. Jian Wushuang heard the words for a moment, then said dumbly. The spacecraft made a roar and headed towards the Emperor's ancestral site. Just when the spacecraft was about to reach the entrance of the galaxy, leading to the ruins of the Emperor's ancestors, an ordinary disciple in the universe of the Life Shrine Fleet suddenly fell to the ground with a stunned noise. His stomach turned up, and his mouth vomited. Vomit. Puff. Suddenly, countless pieces of flesh and blood were spit out from the disciple's mouth, including a finger-sized black corpse. Brother Makino, what's wrong with you? What is this? Suddenly, many disciples next to this disciple were startled, looked at him. There was a turmoil. Now about to enter the Emperor's ancestral site, all the disciples are tense, holding their breath and being tense. The sudden vision suddenly panicked them. What's wrong? Jian Wushuang frowned and looked back. I saw that the corpse jumped on the deck, and suddenly turned into a black rush, piercing the galaxy where the Emperor's site was located. The 9 forbidden areas are all small worlds developed independently, and the entrance to the passage is the center of the galaxy. At the moment, in the center of the galaxy at the site of the Emperor's ancestor, a back wearing a black suit stood with his hand on his back, stepping on a meteorite, hunting in his clothes. The whole man was full of indifference. Call out. The corpse fell on the shoulder of the black back, and then slid into the body along the gap of the collar. Jian Wushuang watched this scene, his brows gradually frowned. This back gives him a familiar feeling. Next moment, the back of the black man turned slowly, his gaze looked at Jian Wushuang, and he spit out 2 words without expression. Missed double. As the voice fell, the back of the black man's face also emerged from the shadow. This person, he is the Emperor of the Refining Gods, 8 desolate lords. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's heart sank and his pupils shrank. How did this person appear here? I saw Ba Huangxu staring at Jian Wushuang indifferently, and said, Fog Shuang, I will be here, didn't think of it? As early as year 1, disguised as the Red Whale Gang leader, mixed into the 87th place. When there was a crack, the seat was faintly aware of it. After the war began, the seat finally confirmed that it was you. Jian Wushuang heard nothing, and did not answer. Extreme blood, I stopped him, and you brought the disciples of life to the tragedy. Jian Wu's eyes narrowed, and he pulled the sword out of the sheath. After saying this, Jian Wushuang directly turned into a practicing swordman that runs through the world, and killed towards the 8 desolate deities. 8 wastelands, 6 marks, and the divine universe are invincible supreme. This is the sword incomparable, the first time invincible to the enemy. Fu Jun, seeing cold like frost, his face suddenly changed, and he wanted to rush out. Alas! A big hand caught the frosty cuff. The Bloodwave Supreme expression was dignified, and he shook his head. Mrs. Palace, we can't intervene in this battle. Staying here will only drag the palace. Listen to the palace. Let's go to the land of tragedy. The voice dropped, and Bloodwave Supreme directly manipulated the spacecraft, turned the bow, and a roar shot toward the sad and sorrowful land next to the Emperor's ancestral site. At the position of his eyebrow, a purple Sichuan word appeared faintly, like blood dripping. His eyes turned into the bright color of pale gold, his blood rolled, his muffled sound like a hammer. This is an anomaly that spawns chaos overlord to the extreme. Battle, the word was spit out by Jian Wushuang's open mouth. In the next moment, the whole person has been transformed into a dawning swordman, turning heaven and earth into a line, and instantly beheaded towards the 8 desolate emperors. Carved insect tricks. Wu Bahuang Su Zun hummed with an expressionless expression, and flew up to meet him, fighting with Jian Wushuang. Ha! Ha! One after another the roar came from the encounter between the two, as if 2 wild beasts were fighting. Open the sky! Cut star! Yongyi! Breaking dawn! One after another, the sword masters that had made Jian Wushuang slay countless enemies, cast out from the hands of Jian Wushuang. However, it is useless, everything is useless. Su Bahuang Su Zun's hands surging forcelessly, as if holding 2 thunders in his hand, directly destroying them, crushing them as much as possible. In the blink of an eye, the two fought over 100 moves. Is this the power of Invincible Supreme? He was slammed back and forth by one palm, and Jian Wushuang, who had cracks on his body, uttered a marvel in his mouth. A trace. He is far from the ultimate state of invincibility, and there is always a gap. This seemingly small gap, but in fact it is like of nature, is a gap that he can never cross in a short time. However, Jian Wushuang was astonished in his heart, but he didn't know how much stormy sea surged in his heart at the moment. According to the conversion of the realm of the virtual universe, Jian Wushuang's cultivation is now a realm, but it is only a 2-mark virtual honor, and he is a 6-mark virtual honor, standing at the peak of the entire universe. Although in the confrontation just now, Bahuang Xuanzuan did not use those earth-shattering killing moves, but the power of the shot was enough to kill all the Xuanshan below the level of 6 marks. However, Jian Wushuang, although suppressed by him, how can there be a slight danger of life and death? Howling. If this sun does not kill, it will become a confidant of the virtual universe in the future. Thought of this, there is a sense of killing in the eyes of Bahuang Xuanzuan, and he no longer intends to keep his hand, but wants to set his sword directly to death. Miss Shuang, let's die. This seat has given you the opportunity to choose another camp, but you don't cherish it. You must blame this seat for being ruthless. Bahuang Su Zun spoke coldly, and in his hands, a small whirlpool appeared suddenly, and endless virtual power began to condense. A smashing force of destruction destroyed the atmosphere, crushing the eternal void. And Jian Wushuang has already directly cast his biggest killing move before then. Taro Sword Code 5th Style Ataro. Boom! Chapter 4578. Miss Double. Seeing Jian Wushuang blasting towards the entrance to the path of sadness and sorrow, Bahuang Zizan's face was instantly furious. As soon as he wanted to get up and chase, he saw the Taro swordsman that Jian Wushuang had used his best efforts to hack, and slashed at him. That sharp sword, even if it is him, dare not belittle it. Damn! Bahuang Su Zun's face sank, and he had to stop and move his whole body power to resist this sword. Virtual art Big Ghost's hand. Su Bahuangzhuang sighed coldly, and saw his hands suddenly turn black. His nails skyrocketed, became sharp, and the body of corpse was exuded like smoke. Say to this seat. Yahuang Shuzuan sighed coldly, and then suddenly pushed forward with his hands, grabbed the magnificent Tai Luo Jianmang. Ha! I saw countless sparks splashing at the junction of Yahuang Shuzuan and this sword. I was like a man with steel gloves, a steel gear that was moving at a high speed, and the figure of 8 desolation, backed by the sword, and his legs crossed a long mark in the void. This sword. Su Bawang's face was extremely furious. The last form of Tai Luo Jindian was cut by Jian Wushuang. Although it could not bring him a deadly threat, it actually gave him a feeling like acupuncture. This is impossible for the Supreme to the Invincible Supreme. Say to this seat. After I was pushed back by 100 feet by this sword, Bahuang Shuzuan stared at his eyes with a roar, and the black mang in his hands suddenly became a masterpiece. Next moment, this sword was directly tortured by Bahuang Shuzuan. After Sun shattered the sword, Bahuang Shuzuan gasped slightly, and a few beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Then, he lowered his head and looked into the palms of his hands, only to see that in his palm position, a wound with deep bones was cut and blood dripped. Missed double. The eighth desolation frowns and winces. One step to the entrance to the land of sorrow. Let's take a look at this seat, can you run? Lung Lung snorted, and Bahuang Xuanzuan let out a false sense, spreading towards this sad and humble place. Only 3 breaths. Ha! Su Bahuang Suzun is like being hit by a heavy hammer. The whole person bends down, and spit out a spit of blood, and his face becomes waxy yellow instantly. Big land. He looked up at this sad place, his eyes flashed with fear and fear. Just now he explored this sad place with false knowledge, just as if he had touched an unspeakable existence. In an instant, he broke up all his false knowledge. If he hadn't responded fast enough to cut off his falsehood in time, I'm afraid that the unbelievable power has spread to him along with the falsehood, and destroyed him together. Miss Shuang, you have entered this terrible land. You are seeking your own way of death. He shook his head, and Ba Huangsun's complexion glanced towards this sad and hungry place, and immediately he stepped into a stream of light and quickly left here. In his opinion, Jian Wushuang and the people of the Temple of Life have entered this land of sorrow and have no doubt died. I don't need to continue smashing here to waste time. In the Wailing Land, Wu Jianwushu retracted the corpse of Tai Luo, stepped on it, and quickly rushed forward. This is a long passage darkened to the eyes. Even if Jian Wushuang used the medium and supreme cultivation to look forward, he still felt the darkness and visibility, no more than 10 meters. Alas, Wu Jian Wushuang did not dare to release his consciousness at will, but kept flying forward. He could feel the cold walls on both sides of this long passage. The walls seemed to be engraved with something. Out of prudence, Jian Wushuang did not touch it randomly, but shot continuously forward. After the time of Wuxiangxiang, Jian Wushuang saw a light of ignition not far away. That is the flame of the engine burning when the spacecraft was traveling. Ha! Suddenly, Jian Wushuang stepped up and caught up with the spacecraft one step, followed by several steps, and landed on the deck of the first spacecraft. Palace Lord, seeing Jian Wushuang return, the blood wave is supreme, cold as frost, etc., and immediately frowned. Father, are you okay? Cold as Frost held the sword's palm, and asked with some concern. I'm fine, but have you encountered any danger along the way? Qi Jian Wushuang smiled, and shaved the bridge of the cold frosty nose and said, I heard that Jian Wushuang said it was okay. And everyone was relieved. The 8 desolate deities are divided according to the realm of the divine universe, but the invincible supreme exists. Nothing happened to us. We have been advancing in this channel, but it is strange to say that at our speed, at least 3 or 4 galaxies have passed through, but they are still in this channel. Nodded coldly and replied. Jian Wushuang heard nothing and frowned. Sure, this passage is a bit weird. Palace Lord, we are not in the divine universe now. Each forbidden area is a small world opened up separately, so we cannot use the regular time to calculate the distance. Sun Xuebwa said with a smile. Although he is inferior to Jian Wushuang in terms of combat power and cultivation, but the storms that he has experienced for so many years have made him more knowledgeable in academic experience than Jian Wushuang. Is that so? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, nodded immediately, and no longer thought deeply and said, Go on. Yes. The space fleet at the Shrine of Life once again moved forward steadily. However, this journey is 3 days and nights. With the speed of the cosmic boat, even hundreds of star fields have also crossed, but at this moment are still in this dim channel. This time, even the Supreme Blood frowned, faintly aware that something was wrong. However, in this place of sadness and honor, no one dares to act lightly, but has to wait for the mood in his heart, and wait quietly to completely reach the place of sadness and honor. For a long time, it was continuously stretched. On the deck, Yu reading books www. Akanshu, calm, cold and frosty, and leaning on the sword's shoulders, let the dark wind in this passage constantly blow on the cheeks of the two. Fu Jun, Now the magical universe will be all over sooner or later. What do you say, Qing'e? What will the gods do in the beginning? Cold and Frosty said, a bit lost. During the passage of this passage, they also seldom fell into peace. Being sullen and calm often makes people think a lot. This made Lung Rushuang think a lot, such as the children of the two, such as those who stayed in the early world of the gods. It's okay. In the early days, the terrain of the divine realm was remote, and the war will not spread there for a while. The first step of the virtual universe will only conquer the top forces. Chapter 4579. Who? Wu Jian Wushuang turned back sharply and looked behind him. I saw the dark deck behind him, and in my eyes was empty. Father, what's wrong with you? Cold and Frosty holding Jian Wushuang's hand. He couldn't help asking a question. Jian Wushuang did not reply, but frowned tightly. Just now, he heard a weird low laugh behind his ears. But when he looked back, he saw nothing. Shuang, or did you hear laughter just now? Wu Jianshou took a deep breath and asked Lung Rushuang. Ah, laughter? Cold and Frosty, he could not help but hesitated, then shook his head and said, No. Husband, have you been too nervous lately? Is it? Wu Jianshuang frowned, and then looked around again, and found nothing abnormal. Could you really have heard it wrong? Maybe it is. Wu Jianshou smiled bitterly and sighed slightly. Recently, he is really under pressure. Well, let's go into the cabin. This channel is just a little weird. I thought for a while Jian Wushuang proposed. It is good. Frosty nodded. Giggle giggle. Jian Wushuang holding cold as frost, about to turn his head and approach the cabin. That spooky and weird low laughter sounded again in Jianwu's ears, like a ghost whispering in his ears. This time Jian Wushuang heard clearly. Pretend to be a ghost. Jianwu's eyes were cold. With his strong sense nowadays, one mistake may be because the mind is too tight. But it is impossible to hear wrong for the second time. Next moment, God eyes open. Countless blood surges and gathers into Jian Wushuang's eyes. In a short time, the sword of Wuxian surged 3 inches in his eyes, and the purple chuan mark appeared on the center of his eyebrow, as if the flame was beating. His expression was blank and his eyes swept away. However, the result disappointed him. I still see nothing. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang's face could not help but swell and gradually drew up, holding his left hand as cold as frost, and his right hand quietly, holding the hilt of the sword of Tai Luo. Feeling the warmth from the hilt of the Tai Luo divine sword, Jian Wushuang's heart was slightly at ease. He stared tightly forward without notice. Scratching in the dark behind him, a pair of wrinkled, dry-skinned hands, stretched out silently, tremblingly patted on his shoulder. Hiss! For a moment, Jian Wushuang's eyes were frozen, and he turned his head to look instantly. I saw behind him, pale cold as frost looking at him with a smile. Shuanger. Wu Jian's brows frowned. Wasn't it cold as frost beside him? No. Wu Jianshou looked back fiercely, and saw Lung Rushuang looking in horror at the cold frost that appeared behind the two. Two as cold as frost. Are you looking for me? Cold as frost looked at Jian Wushuang with a smirk, and the corners of his mouth slowly opened. Grind. Until the entire mouth reached the back of the ear, exposing a mouth. She reached out her hand, and yanked it towards Jian Wushuang's eyes. Look for death. Jian Wushuang's eyebrows were cold. His right hand had been holding the tailored Excalibur with the hilt of the sword, and it instantly emerged from the sheath, turning into a stunning white rainbow, fiercely chopping forward. I haven't waited for this sword to split. I saw cold as frost like a melting candle. Eyes, nose, and mouth began to melt quickly, and after just a few breaths, it turned into a thick pool of white liquid on the ground. Giggle, giggle. The weird sound of crying and laughing gradually disappeared. After a short while, the deck of the spacecraft once again turned into a group of dead silence. Wu Jianwushu retracted the Taro Excalibur with a frown. Is NT weird even before he really enters the land of tragedy? Father, what is that? Frozen as frost asked. I don't know. It may be caused by the grudges in this sad place. Wu Jianshou shook his head and said, crackling. At this moment, the cabin door was opened, and Bloodwave Supreme stepped forward hurriedly. Palace, something happened. Bloodwave Supreme expression was heavy. What happened? Wu Jian's eyelids jumped. Gongzhu, you'll know when you follow. After finishing speaking, Xuanbua Supreme took the sword unparalleled and walked towards the cabin, where the disciples of Life Shrine rested. A moment later, Sword Wushuang arrived in the cabin. I saw a bed on which a disciple of Life Shrine was lying, with the giant axe, the Heavenly Supreme, the 9 kings and other people standing next to them, all of whom had an ugly face. Palace Lord. Palace Lord. Seeing Jian Wushuang coming, Giant Axe and others turned back. Wu Jian Wushuang nodded toward them as a response, without any nonsense, walked directly towards this disciple. I saw the 5th series master of this Life Shrine disciple dominated the repair. At this moment, he was tightly bound to the bed by the blood strength blood-binding technique. The disciple has dilated pupils, his face is gray, and the expression on his face is strange. Giggle. Giggle. He didn't open his mouth, but there was a sound of crying and laughing coming from his throat. And he was stupid. He didn't notice it at all, but he kept his eyes open. It's this laugh again. Wu Jianshuang's face became ugly, and a bad premonition surged in his heart. Let me see. Su took a deep breath, and Jian Wushuang strode forward. Photo. He stretched out his fingers, and Jian Wushuang nodded on the disciple's brows. Just when Jian Wushuang was about to release his divine power and probed his body. Sun originally was like a dead body. A stupid-looking disciple suddenly reached out his hand, grabbed Sword's wrist. You came. Come quickly. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Giggle. Giggle. Weird cries and laughter from the disciple's throat. Immediately after that, the scene that Jian Wushuang met on the deck again. I saw the body of this disciple, like a fast-burning candle, starting from the hair and melting little by little into a thick pool of white foam. Damn. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's face was gloomy to the extreme. Weird. Too weird. He thought that the place of tragedy would be very dangerous, and he was even prepared to let go of the war, even if he died. But he did not expect that this sad place would be so weird. Visible danger, no matter how strong it is not terrible. There is always a way to cope. However, the strange phenomenon that appeared in the place of sadness and misery was invisible and intangible, and there were no traces to be found. The unknown is always the hardest to deal with. What about other disciples? Is there anything unusual? Qi Jian Wushuang turned his head and looked at Bloodwave Supreme and others, and said that his face was not very good. Sun Xuebwa Supreme and others also did not look very good. Chapter 4580. In the passage of the quiet and sad place. Dozens of spacecraft are marching quietly. I was swallowed by the roar of the engine in this immense absolute darkness. Return to the Lord of the Palace. Other disciples have not found any abnormalities. Bloodwave Supreme replied slightly. Wu Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and was about to get the attention of Bloodwave Supreme. What? A terrifying scream screamed, and the space fleet behind him suddenly blew. Screaming in this dark and silent passage, it seemed to be so extreme. Wu Jianshuang's face changed instantly, his body flickered, and he swept directly towards the spacecraft behind him. Sun Xuebwa Supreme and others looked at each other. Their faces were ugly, and they quickly followed. A moment later, in the cabin of the 9th spacecraft, Jian Wushuang saw the female disciple who was screaming. I saw the female disciple trembling, her shoulders trembling, her face pale, and she stretched her fingers toward the glass window of the space capsule, her voice terrified. Palace Lord, someone outside. Someone. Jian Wushuang stared, but it was dark outside the glass. This made Jian Wushuang's face gloomy. You tell me just now. Wu Jian said without expression on both sides. It is good. The female disciple flashed a flash of memory on her face, and began to narrate. Things are simple. Not long ago, this female disciple, originally called Su Yang, was practicing cross-kneeling in the cabin. When she was practicing, she encountered a bottleneck, and thought of asking her disciples who were higher than her, and giving directions. Subconsciously, She glanced into the glass window next to her. It turned out to be such a look. She instantly saw a scene that would make her unforgettable. I saw on the glass window a face with a blushing face, affixed to the window, eyes hanging like rotten grapes, staring at her. Because the face is too close, the whole facial features become distorted and terrible. It was also the sudden appearance of the face that scared her into a slump and fell to the ground, screaming. After this female disciple finished speaking, her face still looked astonished. I know. Wu Jianshuang's face is not very good-looking. Ghosts make? They are not ordinary mortals. They are supreme gods standing on the top of this universe. The goblin demon monsters in their eyes are simply the ants among the ants. Master of Wushuang Palace, come over here, I have something to tell you. At this moment Lan Lan, who had been silent, suddenly appeared. Okay. Wu Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and followed Lan Lan out of the cabin. The two went to the deck, and Jian Wushou stood with his hands up and said, Girl Lan Lan, you can say anything. Lan Lan nodded and did not continue to speak, but looked away, as if reminiscing about something. After a while, his expression gradually became dignified and said, Jian Wushuang, you know what our universe was before it was born. What does it look like? Wu Jianshuang heard a word and said that he had never really understood the matter before the universe was opened up. But hear the details. Wu Jianwushuang reached out and made a pleased gesture. My master once suspected that our universe is just a cycle. Reincarnation? Jian Jian's brows frowned. Yes. Tong Lanlan exhaled deeply and said, It is reincarnation. According to my master's conjecture, before our universe civilization was born, other civilizations may have been born in this universe. He is just this civilization. For some reason it was destroyed after all, and the universe returned to chaos. Once again, after a long time, the universe has restarted, giving birth to new life and giving birth to a new civilization. He is our civilization now. Yin Jian Wushuang frowned when he heard the words. Everything Lan Lan said was not impossible. He believes that the speculation of God of the earth is not groundless. My master once came to explore these two forbidden places. Unfortunately, my master kept silent about this experience, and only occasionally, I mentioned it inadvertently. According to my master, the emperor's ancestor seemed to bury an extremely powerful corpse that he could not even see through. The age of this corpse is even older than our universe. This sad place, according to the occasional mention of the master, seems to be the last place to fall in the last universe. Jian Wushuang, if this place of tragedy is really like my master said, this is the place where the last universe era fell, then there must be countless characters from the last universe era, and they are buried here together. Lan Lan has not finished speaking. Suddenly, in this quiet passage, a strange song came out. God is dead. The devil is gone. Everything is in the dust and nothingness. Fu Songtian weep alone. Singing like this, it seems that there are countless gods crying distant and distant faint with a bit of. Suddenly Jian Wushuang looked up sharply. However, he hadn't waited for Jian Wushuang to run his divine power to see what happened. Suddenly grief came from his heart, and a sorrowful meaning rose in his heart. That is a sorrow of vicissitudes of life, a despair of all kinds of despair, a sadness of loneliness and solitude. Wu Mingming only sang, but under this sadness, Jian Wushuang couldn't bear a sore nose for a while. Crackling, that was the sound of water dripping on the deck. Yu Kanshu www. Akanshu, Calm Chi Jian Wushuang looked at her, and saw Lan Lan staring blankly at the starry sky, not knowing when. She was already in tears. Girl Lan Lan? Chi Jian Wushuang forcibly suppressed the sadness in his heart to destroy him, and tried to call Lan Lan. However, Lan Lan was as if stagnant, not even aware of it. Faintly, Jian Wushuang felt a wet face on his face, and he reached out his hand, only to find that his face was also covered with tears. He could feel the sadness as if he had turned into a pair of big hands, holding him tightly around his neck, and dragging him into a place of no end. Pretend to be a ghost. Wu Jianshou bit his tongue tightly, and for a while, the pain came from the tip of his tongue, making him slightly awake. Howling to endure this discomfort, the sword unparalleled stepped into the cabin. I saw the blood in the cabin of the Supreme, the Great Axe, the King of Nine Calamity, and so on, or an ordinary disciple, including Cold as Frost, all looked like a devil and stood in the cabin dull. Damn! Qi Jian Wushuang clenched his fists, and then, he could no longer resist the sorrow. His eyes were black, as if falling into an endless abyss. In the narrow, long and quiet path of the sorrowful land, a dead silence was restored again, leaving only the song that was crying like a demon, but also like a low laugh, ringing back and forth strange and eerie. Chapter 4581. The mist mixed with black-gray silk threads was scattered on Jian Wushuang's face with the wind. His intangible but qualitative feeling made him realize his current situation. Yokohama's cosmic boat traveling through the stars disappeared, and all the disciples in the Temple of Life disappeared. Sun's intense uneasiness prompted Jian Wushuang to open his eyes, and the eyes were extremely dark with the raging wind. It seems that the extremely dark shadows that existed in ancient times obscured everything. Even if the sword master Wu Shou displayed his magical power, he could only see the area that is a few feet away. Where is this place? Have I come to the land of tragedy? Jian Wushuang murmured softly, but he remembered that he was in the cosmic boat just now. But he was in this strange world at the moment. After thinking for a moment, he held up a pile of sand on the ground with his hands, and he saw through the golden eyes that the sand was not black, but a rough white substance covering a layer of golden halo. The long and twilight-like sound of the bell in the morning passed through the distant past, coming from a distant past. In this strange environment, Jian Wushuang was horrified. He quickly lowered his figure and looked at the chaotic distance. The next moment, the extreme darkness of chaos slowly rose and rose like a clear air. At the same time, with the extreme darkness fading, there were nearly 100 big suns rising at the same time. Even in this scene, even the sword unparalleled sword-making of the kingdom of God is secretly shocked. Nothing else, just because this scene is too shocking. At this moment, these slowly rising big days are far more than 100 times larger than the big days in any part of the universe. At the same time, these big days are no longer pure and pure, but they emit purple-red giant mansions. Each side of the world has been dyed into a scary purple-red color by these nearly 100 rounds of big sun. With the extremely dark retreat, the long bells of the morning bell and twilight became more frequent and began to sound like war drums. The sadness of weeping like a cry is even more intimidating in this barren star universe. The various strange phenomena in front of his eyes made Jian Wushuang not act lightly. He already guessed in his heart that this is the place of tragedy. He is waiting, and his subconscious intuition tells him that everything here is just the beginning. Time is here, it has long lost any value. With the sky rising to the sky for 100 days, suddenly this ancient and desolate and sad place suddenly began to bloom with countless divine power. The sacred ancient divine power of Biju Dome filled the earth in an instant, followed by extremely pure and rich or golden, red blood fell like Hongyu. Whereas the sword Shuang, who is fully absorbed in thinking of such a come out, directly by countless blood, took a cool look. The sword Wushuang, who was poured into a body, hurriedly displayed his magical power to open up a transparent barrier and hid it. Descending with the blood of God, there are countless huge limbs and broken arms that surround the ancient charm of God. The broken armor engraved with ancient cipher text is full of blood, and broken soldiers are even more uncountable. Qi Jian Wushuang became more and more shocked when he looked at it, and at the same time, he had roughly guessed the true meaning of this sad place. When the vast and boundless earth was filled with broken soldiers and corpses, the entire place of tragedy became a place of burial. The long cry of sorrow and demon resounded, as if heaven and earth were telling a lament. Wu Jianshuang's state of mind seemed to resonate with everything in this burial land, and began to move uncontrollably. Every one of the supreme gods who has the power to stun the ancients is lost here. I don't know. Jian Wushuang shook his head hard, and he began to find that his consciousness was affected. However, an even more incredible scene appeared. The corpse of the god scattered on the ground rose and fell like clouds of smoke and disappeared in a blink of an eye. In its place, the countless pounds of powers were crushed from a faraway place. Before the power of the gods arrived, the sky dome took the lead to start the large-scale crack collapse. Hagi originally hung over the sky for 100 days. At this moment, the purple feathers were born, transformed into a three-legged purple black enough to cover the sky. There are countless divine powers transformed into an incomparable great horror existence, or take the wind and the clouds, or 3 or 5 times, and go to this vast battlefield. The sky of heaven was smashed by divine power under their presence. This ancient world battlefield cannot bear the existence of this unimaginable giant engine, just the majestic and mighty divine power they radiated. They constituted the most extreme collision belonging to that era. The heavens and the earth were trembling. The sound seemed to be fixed. The sword is unparalleled and terrifying. The existence of the level of the universe is the most ordinary in this scene of tragedy. He can't imagine that when the gods of that level have been reached, what will they be for? On top of the chaotic sky, hundreds of three-legged purple swaying with black-purple tail feathers, projecting the extinct purple flames downward. Every beam of flame easily tears the rule road, leaving a violent and wanton atmosphere. There was no killing, and the ultimate battle began completely. The unimaginable divine power, even if it is only a trace, is enough to wreck the zombie of the virtual universe, and the invincible supreme even cannot survive for a long time. Divine soldiers fight, powerful to the extreme existence of the old and wild and ancient, with the purest fight, struggling to manipulate the divine soldiers to kill each other. Brightness is everywhere. There is supreme being. Use a long bow to shoot down the 3-footed purple Wu above the sky, and use the purple Wu corpse to throw the purest burst into the opponent. There is no existence, holding the phaseless Excalibur to fight against the enemy at the last moment and die together. There is nothing but generous death, and Dedeo laughs loudly before disappearing. On Wu Yanyan's battlefield, there was an extremely chaotic collision. Like the lament of the sea monster singing, it blew up in Jian Wushuang's mind. He stayed out of the situation, but seemed to be there. He wants to close his eyes, but his pupils are enlarged a little bit crazies, lunatics, all lunatics. What's wrong with all these reincarnations? Even if it is absolutely impossible, can you escape the heavens? Jian Wu's eyes were trembling, and blood was pouring from every pore. Whether the Taos in this world are Chongqing Tao or Killing Tao, I don't understand. Painful thoughts can't restrain divergence. The ever-building avenue of faith in his heart began to collapse uncontrollably. Are we all? If so, what's the meaning of the end result? It's just a way of dying. Never had the golden eyes of languidness disappear, and began to appear a touch of dullness. I want to sleep for a while. As the ultimate battle on the sky began to come to an end, all supreme beings disappeared. Jian Wushuang also slowly lowered his eyelids. Wu Tianxiong cried. The rules were broken, and the top road was returned to its original state. What do you mean by chasing for thousands of years, preaching for 10,000 years, and enlightening for 1,000,000 years? Like a clear spring, everything is reborn. A sound broke into my ear. Little guy, wake up. Chapter 4582. The lament in my ears gradually dissipated, replaced by a slightly cordial call. This call seems to have some magic power, drawing the swordless Wu Shou, which is almost dead, from the fallen consciousness. He opened his eyes reluctantly, and his eyes were clear and thin. I was sober for a moment, and the subconscious reaction caused the sword unparalleled to move back several feet, and watched the old uncle in white clothes with vigilance. An old with a clear face does not blame Jian Wushuang's impoliteness. He smiled and got up and introduced himself. Hello, little guy, I stop when I call. Without any paralysis, Jian Wushuang thought for a moment, and then said, Have met the old gentleman. Those who can appear here, and are not the temple of life. These 2 items alone are enough for Jian Wushuang to raise the highest vigilance. At the same time, he also began to doubt whether the extreme battle that had appeared before was the old man in front of him. The old self-proclaimed stopper smiled and waved. You and I meet here. You have a destiny, so you don't have to be restrained. Wu Jian Wushuang was unmoved. After seeing the surrounding scenes, there was a moment of unconsciousness. Countless broken bones were buried or exposed on the ground, and the damaged soldiers in blood-stained armor were mostly buried by sand and stone. Even if the avenue disappeared for hundreds of millions of years, the incomparable pure divine power still protected their masters, just as it was then. The scene in front of him was as he had seen before. But the Supreme Being has all fallen. Is this the real place of tragedy? Jian Wushuang asked, wondering how to show his inner thoughts for a moment. When he stopped, he smiled a little, not counting his clear pupils, reflecting the scene above the earth. You call it a place of tragedy, but in my heart, it is a place of burial gods. All go. The words that stop for a while are light, but at the end they show a bit of loneliness. Looked a little strangely and paused, because it was not difficult to hear from his words. The old-timer-like pause seems to have gone through that era, and has been living to the present. After seeing the scene, Jian Wushuang did not believe it anyway. There would be a supreme being to survive the ultimate battle. He seemed to be able to feel what Jian Wushuang thought, and he stopped to recollect from his memories and said, "The old man is willing to wait here, only to find the right person." "Who's coming?" "Me." Jian Wushuang didn't know how to make his position. He didn't wait for him to speak, and asked himself, "Little guy, why are you here?" As soon as the statement came out, Jian Wushuang became a little embarrassed. The divine power universe fell. As the new life shrine palace master, after careful calculations, he was ready to come to a place of sadness and energy, but these words came to his mouth. Bien didn't know how to speak. "I do and think there is too much malice to stop at this time. But if you do and leave them, I'm afraid to wave them to suppress them or expel them out." Jian Wushuang didn't dare to gamble on the risks he took. During this brief stalemate, Jian Wushuang suddenly realized that the 3 spaceships carrying the entire Palace of Life did not seem to have come to this side of tragedy. He trembled in his heart. The disciples of the tens of thousands of life shrines, but the last sustenance of the divine universe. If there is any loss, it will be a disaster for the divine universe. No, it won't. Jian Wushuang turned quickly to find the whereabouts of several spacecraft. Su Shi stopped and called him in time. "Little guy, what are you looking for?" As the voice dropped, he stopped and stretched out his hand, and the original dim sky seemed to float up and down, and a ripple rippled suddenly. Then, the space opened outward, and the cosmic boat that could balance with the stars slowly sailed out of the crack. But the deadly silence on its deck did make Jian Wushuang tense for a moment. He is very clear. The dark channel leading to this sad and fertile land is so powerful that even the Supreme and others are deceived, and the weaker one is not sure that he died on the spot. Regardless of the time to stop saying hello, Jian Wushuang leapt to the deck, only a little relieved after seeing the scene in front of him. I saw that the Blood Pool Supreme and others all leaned on Zhou Wei and fell asleep. From the long breath, there was no danger to their lives. Their realm is too weak. They resolutely enter the burial god's land. At least it is detrimental to the realm, and the soul is lost, and they become the nourishment of the burial god's land. Therefore, I have to let them fall asleep to avoid many ban. With the voice, came the straight and thin figure already standing behind Jian Wu's body. Listening to the explanation, Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate, turned and arched his hands and said, "Thank you, Mr. Lao, for your help, and the younger generation is grateful." Su Shi smirked and waved his hand. "Don't rush to say thank you first. Although I have taken care of each other, but those who are too low level in the realm of consciousness, I'm afraid we can't escape this." Shen Jianwushuang sank in his heart, and hurriedly urged Shintong to prepare to awaken everyone. But thinking about his own, Shintong might not be able to awaken them. Even if he urged the blood of the original source in his body, he tried to wave to several people. The result is not the same. With the blood of the origin, blood waves, giant axe, Lon, and cold as a few people took the lead to wake up. Visit the Lord of the Wushuang Palace. When Xingbo Supreme and others were looking at Xiang Jianshuang, They immediately turned around and worshipped on one knee. Don't use those red tapes anymore. Novel. Jian Wushuang closed his hands to signal their rise. Bloodwave Supreme shook his head, and 2 tears burst into his eyes. Old man thought that we could only drink and hate in that dark passage, and never thought we would reach this sad place safely. The universe is endless in my temple of life. Fu Jun Lung Rushuang couldn't hold back, and hurriedly wept into Jian Wushuang's arms and wept. I thought I would never see you again. Wu Jianshou rubbed the fairy's hair in his arms and whispered, I promise you, even if I die, I will never see you again. Most of the shrine disciples in the first cosmic boat woke up, showing the joy of the rest of the life after the disaster. Only Lan Lan, who stood beside the Supreme Blood Emperor, calmed down and set his sights on the straight and thin figure behind Jian Wushuang. This is not the time for comfort. I want to count all the disciples to deal with the next thing. Jian Wushuang said. Cold nodded and nodded, leaving his arms. After staring at each other such as Sun Bo Sun and others, Jian Wushuang rushed to the other 2 cosmic boats. A moment later, Jian Wushuang used the blood of the origin to awaken the disciples in the other 2 boats. The disciples who went to the place of tragedy this time. There were more than 14,600 people, and nearly 3,000 people stayed in the dark channel forever. The other weaker disciples have also been more or less affected. Chapter 4583. The salvation of these magical universes ultimately saved so many deaths, just after entering this tragic land, which made everyone's hearts clouded. I don't know if it's dull in my heart, or the essence of the blood has passed too much. When falling from the cosmic boat, the sword has fallen straight to the ground. Master of Wushuang Palace, Bloodwave Supreme, and others hurriedly held up the falling sword Wushuang. Afterwards, the Bloodwave Supreme urged the magical power, shrouding the divine power to him, slowly soothing the meridians. Nothing. Jian Wushuang's expression recovered, and he waved his hand and stood upright. Immediately, he looked at the stop right in front of him and walked slowly. He solemnly arched his hands, and Jian Wushuang sank in a deep voice. The main sword Wushuang of the Palace of Life Palace. I implore the old man to let me wait in this sad place. The universe is huge, except here, there is no place for us to live. After saying this, Jian Wushuang's figure trembled slightly, as if he had emptied all his strength. The of the universe seals the virtual with his body, destroys the supreme soul and soul, and turns into a blow to the sky, blocking the void universe. And the ancestor of Fengtian uses burning life to turn into a wall to seek a way for the magical universe. Everything these elders do is to save the last fire of the divine universe. In today's scene, everything in the beginning always came to mind, making Jian Wushuang even more sad. Of course, Shi Dianking's face slowly showed a smile. I have spent some time in this burial place, and someone will accompany me, but it doesn't look boring. As Yunkai Yueming, Jian Wushuang only felt the sorrow in his heart abruptly and arched with excitement. Thank you, old mister. The younger generation and others are grateful. Bloodwave Supreme and others were also very excited. Looking at each other, the original pressure was reduced a lot. No one dared to approach the sorrowful place of exploration, which was finally entered by the final salary of the divine universe. And the heavens were immortal. On the pitiful land full of bones and corpses, countless vast majestic divine power is still as agile as the Lord lived before his life. Each corpse is an independent existence. From time to time, divine power turns into everything and rises up, untiringly releasing the final breath. Because these divine powers that have existed since the desolation were too vast, even those who are invincible and supreme blood, tentacles, giant axes and so on, are struggling to walk, let alone nearly 10,000 people who are far weaker than the Supreme Life Shrine disciple. Every step they take, just the evolution of the undivided divine power, is enough to break each disciple's meridians. When he reached the 100th step, nearly 3,000 disciples of life shrine fell to the ground at the same time. How is this going? Why can't I move anymore? The 3,000 disciples sitting on the ground turned around one after another. What's going on? Jian Wushuang first noticed the strangeness in the rear, waiting to see so many disciples kneeling behind the ground. He froze for a while, then seemed to be aware of it, and rejoiced. The disciples kneeling on the ground listened to the order. From now on, you will immediately realize in place and absorb any divine power that rushes into your body. You must not resist. From now on, no matter whether it is thousands of years or thousands of years, we must keep our minds in practice with concentration. Bonggong Lord. The disciples of 30,000 yelled in unison. Even though the spin was firmly in place and practiced separately, Huameng rose into the sky, but it was a bit of momentum. God never die, my divine power universe. Bloodwave Supreme eyes were reddish-side. Little guy, my understanding is really good. Shizhan smiled comfortably, and then moved on. Uncontrollable joy overflowed on Jian Wushuang's face. He realized that this place of tragedy would be the last chance for the entire magical universe to fight against the virtual universe again. Next, every 100 steps, there are disciples of 2,000 people who can't hold on anymore and sit still. The more you move forward, the more pure and powerful the derived godless power is. Huge corpses of gods accumulate, each raging divine power soars into the sky and splits the space to survive. The puppet also has mottled and broken marks, like a mysterious rune, occasionally entangled on one of the corpses. Wu Jian Wushuang can vaguely recognize that it belongs to the breath of sermon, but now, it is already broken. Shi Rao is so, even as strong as the blood, he is extremely hot. I must know that it is a more horrible preaching of sermons, and even if you perceive a point, it is definitely more effective than spending hundreds of thousands of epochs. He followed and stopped, and more disciples of the temple sat down and realized. When Jian Wushuang heard Lan Lan's voice, when he looked back, there was only the supreme of blood waves behind him, and there were less than 100 people, such as King Nine Calamity. His wife Lung Rushuang also sat down and realized. Master of Wushuang Palace, Lan Lan stood not far behind her, sweat beads dripped from her cheeks, and the pressure of divine restraint stopped her. I'll fight here and say goodbye to you. Lan Lan arched a hand and laughed, and then sat down slowly. I hope today's goodbye will be another day. Treasure. Treasure. The two of them said goodbye. Lan Lan's restless expression stayed in Jian Wushuang's mind for a moment, and then Jian Wushuang continued to lead Shuebo and others to move on. The majestic power went straight to the Shaohan, and it seemed to be mixed with Xiangrui Qiming and Baoguang flowing. Intact divine soldiers began to appear, condensed flowing of blood that has been immortal for hundreds of millions of years, and at the same time, the power of more and more vast divine power is even more powerful. After the King Zhujiao walked for nearly 100 steps, he stopped and realized. Then came the Heavenly Supreme, the great axe realized in turn. Only sword unparalleled, walking in the middle of it, like a dragon swimming into the sea. Not only did not feel the horrible pressure, but the more he moved forward, the more he walked on the ground. Master of Wushuang Palace, the old man also stopped here. Bloodwave Supreme stopped his steps. His eyes seemed to carry a fiery flame. The master of Wushuang Palace shouldered the god's shoulders. It is no longer possible to accompany the Lord, and I hope the Lord will forgive him. Wu Jianshou did not say more, holding his hands with Supreme Bloodwave's arms, and sincerely said, the Supreme Bloodwave is waiting here. Whether it is 1 Zai or 100,000 Zai, I will definitely keep my responsibility in mind and make a breakthrough. In addition, Supreme Blood, you can also try to break through yourself. You know there is no end, and Supreme has been proven. A few short words like a bloodstained made him tremble. Wu Jianwushuang no longer talked, smiled and turned to keep up. Evening bells and long bells ring between heaven and earth. Countless broken avenues circulate in ancient times, and are reflected in each other. With only a glimpse, you can find the splendor of their owners. Zuntiandi did not know of reincarnation, but from the top of Tianjiao, to the death of a trafficker, they all worked in the same galaxy and lake to prove themselves. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.